We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. My name is Rob H, and this week I'm here with...
Lee Overstreet,
and Joe Klusnick.
Holy smokes, it has happened, folks. The mythical, the legendary, the fabled three-person podcast has actually taken place this week in Tom's absence. So Tom is away. It's a work-related thing. I have not heard how his back is, so he'll update us next week when he's back as to how his back is going. But I can say right now, I'm just going to go right ahead, because he texted me, and I mean, there's big news to share, and we're not going to make anybody wait any longer than this. He has, first of all, you can contact us, and your questions to question@avrant.com. That's not the picture I thought I had prepared. It's this one. Oh my goodness. Woohoo. The surprise is
that a working television?
It is a functioning QD OLED television in Tom's place. So, yes, it was repaired successfully. I'm not sure if it was actually on the day that they said it was going to be, but there it is. And that means that further to that, he already mentioned these, but his pair of SB2000 Pro subwoofers, of which there is photo evidence, can now be installed in his theater. So, fantastic updates from Tom Andry, even though he's away, and he can talk all about it himself when he's back next week. Hooray!
Obviously, I'm a fan of the SB2000 Pros.
Yes, for sure. So,
very much.
Hello to Lee. Hello to Joe. It's crazy. There's three of us. I don't know how this is going to go, but great to see you both.
Hey, great to see you. Happy to be here. It's actually been a decent day. I've just been very busy. So I will be a fidgety monster and then crash later after the show.
Well, as is normal, we're going to have updates from everybody. So, Joe, let's catch up with you a little bit of what's going on.
Good to see you both. Happy to be podcasting with you again. Always fun to talk home theater.
That's good. Anything interesting to share that's gone in since we saw you last? Which wasn't that long ago, thankfully.
No new gear at my place. Just been enjoying the theater as it is.
But you can talk up your appearance on Home Theater Geeks. We did give you a shout-out last week, but we can hear it straight from your mouth. How was it talking to Scott Wilkinson? How was the whole experience?
That was a lot of fun. It gave me an opportunity to sit down and talk through my own home theater, kind of explain the process, the 10-year journey that it's been to build this theater into where it is today, and kind of see where it's going to go next from here.
All right. So I'll just let everybody know we have a ridiculous amount of content to get through today, and I'm not actually planning on making this like a 3-hour podcast because, Lee has to sleep at some point, and he's a couple hours ahead of Joe and myself. But Lee, you have an interesting update. I don't know if you had other things to update as well, but you sent along some photos and a question to go along with it. So why don't we hop right into that?
Right. I guess we'll just jump into that real quick. I'll try to not make it take too long. So a close friend of mine and his wife got a new house.
Okay.
Nice new house. New houses of a certain income level are never set up for home theater.
Okay.
Ever. There's always a gigantic open room with a gigantic, beautiful kitchen and a gigantic, beautiful dining area. And it's a beautiful house, wonderful. But the only place really to put the TV that makes any sense, over the fireplace.
Oh, what a shock.
The whole room is organized around the fireplace, right?
Yep.
So that's it. The couch is facing, the chair is facing the fireplace, which we rarely use here because it's Alabama. But it's a gas fireplace, so you can flick it on and off real quick. So I know they like it. And it is a great house, man. It is fantastic. Okay. And so that made me a little nervous because he asked me to help him install a mount over the fireplace, over the mantle. And it's designed by MantelMount so that you can grab it by a little handle underneath the TV and pull it down in front of the fireplace so you don't have to crane your neck, which is what they were doing in their previous house, which was also designed around a fireplace. So I don't understand why houses have to be this way.
Because builders have been doing that since the 1700s. They think we're still using, pots and kettles over open flame.
I think among certain folks, there is this feeling that your house must emulate the grandness and the oldness. And I'm very happy that our little ranch home here was mid-century modern and did not necessarily do that. We have a separate living room / parlor / sitting room, right? That's what our home theater is. It made it super easy. One big long wall of nothing. It was obvious where everything was going. So not a lot of choices, but at least this exists. So just in a nutshell, these things are kind of amazing, and they do exactly what it says on the tin. It does allow you to grab and pull down. It's a little tricky to install, but not impossible. I would say if someone is interested in this, they do work very well, but it's a bit more of a visual art than it is mathematical calculations. They will give you in the instruction booklet a place to measure and put your measurements and do a calculation, but you really kind of have to feel it. And as people can see, if they're seeing the pictures in the video portion of the podcast, you'll see the template we put on the wall. And of course, builders are still putting coax cable connectors above the fireplace, as well as a power outlet. So the coax cable connector is completely unused. So we had to navigate around all that, and to put it bluntly, we just got lucky. I think we just got lucky. It mounted just right. I will say, if you get one of these, there's one part of the instructions that say to put a lot of weight on it to pull it down, and then you put a pin here. You go ahead and loosen it first. The instructions don't say loosen it first. So you loosen it for a lighter television first, then pull it down. Because listen, I weigh like 140 pounds soaking wet. And I put my all into it, and it was ready to hold a 140-pound TV, I swear. So this, I can't remember the model number of this particular one, but they sell more than one. And this one, fortunately, my friend purchased this with the thought of maybe a bigger, better TV in the future. I doubt he's going to get a much heavier TV, because if he goes to anything, it's going to be under my suggestion to get an OLED, probably the 77-inch, which would stretch window to window on that wall and would look fantastic. So they're going to do that eventually in the future. But right now, they just had to get a TV up there. That's the one they had in the old house, and up it goes. So yeah, you adjust for a lighter television once you get it mounted. The mount itself. Then you do the pull down, put the pin in trick, and move on with the rest of the instructions. And there was one other part where you're, oh shoot, I'm so sorry, I already forgot what part, where you're putting in screws from the back. Yeah, that comes right after you have to pull it down and put the pin in. And,
at least it is away from the wall at that point, though, so you have some access to the back with it pulled down.
And that was the trick. Because they didn't write the instructions very well. If you go ahead and loosen the tightness, pull it down, then you can reach those screws. So just note that if you get one of these. But they work really well. And I was so happy. We had one instance of, oops, we didn't hit the stud. And I swear to you, I cannot figure out what happens at everyone's house. I have a stud finder, and I swear to you, that stud finder says wood is right here. Right here it is. Here's the edge. And over here's the edge. And then you drill in there and no, it's not there. It's over here. So we had one instance of there's a hole, but the hole is hidden by the mount itself, and life goes on. But I hated knowing it was there. I like getting stuff right. But yeah, it pulls down beautifully.
It looks pretty successful. We've got a television that is happily up above the mantle most of the time, but then you pull on the handle and down it comes to a much more reasonable viewing height when you're seated, and you don't have to sit there with your looking up towards the ceiling and your neck all getting a crack in it.
We all used to, at their house, if we're watching a football game, we'd all just sort of lay back on the couch like we're taking a nap. And that's how we watched football games. So I'm so happy for this now, and I can't wait to get back over there. If you're seeing the pictures, you'll see all their moving boxes. As a secondary question that goes along with this. So this mantle mount, at the bottom of it, there's a horizontal piece, and then there are two small, thin, pear-shaped bits of metal that are meant to attach to the bottom horizontal piece that's on the television. And these two little pear-shaped bits simply hang down so that you can mount on them a thin, wide soundbar.
Right.
And I'm wondering if there are any recommendations for a surround sound speaker setup, a kit of 5 speakers, or just one center channel that happens to be in the size and shape of a small soundbar, of a thin soundbar. And if there is, that's what they need to look at for sure when I finally talk them into it.
Yeah, so you mentioned that quickly previously. I think it was in a quick email that you sent to me. And so I was just thinking of, there are a number of very slim center channel speakers. Basically, they're using like either 3-inch diameter or maybe up to 4-inch diameter, but 3.5 or 4-inch diameter little woofers, multiple of them, plus a tweeter. So it looks like basically a quite wide but very, very not tall center speaker, but it is just a traditional speaker. It's not a soundbar. So a couple of examples that I just put in the links for Lee. I was going more towards lower price ranges because this is just a single speaker. This is just a center speaker. So you're still going to have to get at least 2 other speakers to be your front, left, and right. It can be the very same, oriented vertically, or something else from the same series. But certainly on the low end of the price range would be Klipsch Reference, their R34C. This is an example of 4 3.5-inch woofers plus a single 1-inch tweeter. They're claiming frequency extension on the low end to 82 hertz, so you'd certainly want to use at a bare minimum like a 90 hertz crossover frequency to your sub. Honestly, more like 120 works better with this. But the entire thing is basically like 4 inches by 4 inches in terms of depth and height. But then it's like almost a couple of feet wide. But $230, not breaking the bank at all. But then you get a couple more or 2 other speakers from the same series from Klipsch. On the back of it, it's just keyhole mounts. You can orient this thing any way that you want to, but it's just keyholes. So what you would get is a bracket that attaches to that mantle mount. You wouldn't connect this speaker directly to the mantle mount itself, but there are pretty darn simple brackets. They kind of just look like L brackets that attach to the mantle mount and then give you something to put a keyhole mount screw into that bracket, and then that attaches to the back of a speaker like this. If they're willing to spend a little bit more money, I think one that's really, really looking nice and sounds shockingly good is Polk's Signature Elite series. They've got their ES35. Now, this one is even less tall because it has 6 3-inch diameter drivers, not 3.5-inch, 3-inch. So this thing is not even 4 inches tall, but it is a little bit wider because you got 6 of these little drivers. Now this one, I forget exactly what they claim, but it's around 90 to 100 hertz they claim extension, which makes sense for something with drivers this small. But around back again, you just have keyhole mounts on the left and right, so that same type of bracket would work. One thing to know about this one though is it is actually a little bit deeper because it is rear ported, and they include where the keyhole mounts go. It's got a little bit of a bump out bracket built into it to give the proper clearance for the ports on the back. So it adds just a little bit of extra depth to it. It's over 4 inches deep, this one. But yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense, Lee? Is that the type of thing that you're looking for?
I think I can picture how that would be mounted. And they are, I know these two, and they're going to be leaning towards subtlety. They don't want big, obvious speakers. I can talk them into a pretty good subwoofer tucked behind the couch. But I'm not going to talk them into large speakers. So that would do the trick, probably.
So the installer in me is screaming the challenges that you're going to run into. This is a perfect solution for a soundbar that is wirelessly connected to a subwoofer that can then be wired to 2 rear speakers, because you've got no way to get a center channel speaker wire up to that above the TV location. If you come straight out of the TV with an HDMI or a fiber optic, go into a soundbar that can process that, and then you don't have to run anything except power, which you do have up there, and just to connect directly to the TV, and then the subwoofer and the 2 rear speakers, you don't have to do anything because they'll be connected wirelessly. It's a much cleaner way to go. I don't even see a place to put a receiver in this. We don't see the whole room, but
no, it's going to have to be somewhere else, not on that wall. It's going to have to be behind the couch, to tell you the truth. That's going to be where the nearest thing is, because if I had taken more pictures and they didn't want me to because everything was a mess,
of course,
off to the right is the kitchen. It's just wide open to the kitchen, right? And off to the left is a doorway to a tiny hallway that goes to a bathroom and another bedroom. And there's just not anywhere to the side, so it's going to have to be behind the couch. There's a table behind the couch. Probably set some componentry back there. All they're ever going to need is just a receiver. They're not going to be watching discs. They're not going to watch Blu-rays. They're going to stream everything.
Then Joe is bang on the money that, a soundbar is the right way to go in this instance. The thing is, because I was thinking if it's really only the center speaker that's attached to the mantle mount, then, figuring out a way to run one speaker wire that, is zip tied or channel routed through the mantle mount itself so that it doesn't pinch and it can move up and down along with the mount, and then you can do an in-wall run of that single center speaker. I was thinking that the left and right would not be attached to the TV and the mantle mount, that the left and right would stay stationary, maybe on the mantle itself, or they could be on stands to the left and the right of the fireplace.
What we talked about for a hot second was that you could have thin, pretty modern-looking stands that would hold the speakers at mantle height, just wide of those windows.
Yeah.
A small speaker, especially a taller, skinny speaker, would look nice. I didn't give you a wide enough shot. Again, I was trying not to embarrass them and all their stuff. And it was a day we all looked really messy. You can see my reflection in the picture, but you can't see what I'm wearing.
But if routing 3 speaker wires just to the front of the room in any way, I mean, look, things can be done inside the walls, so that is always an option. But if you're looking for the least complicated setup, then a decent soundbar can be absolutely fine in this scenario. Then all you have is an HDMI ARC connection from the TV to the soundbar, which itself is moving along with the TV. And exactly like Joe said, you need a power cable, but you've got one for the TV already. And there's another outlet right there for the soundbar. And then, the surrounds and the subwoofer are wireless connections. So that would make a heck of a lot more sense.
I'm never going to talk them into a powerful, full, big speaker surround sound system. It's never going to happen. I would be able to talk them into 5.1 or a soundbar with two surround speakers and a subwoofer. I'm sure we can talk them into that. But anything that looked that elegant and was that simple, didn't require more wire running, I think they'd be all over that.
I mean, given that this is quite a large room, like I'm kind of a fan of the brand new Klipsch Flexus soundbars. So I'd have a look at those. Klipsch Flexus is pretty darn nice and, has some pretty decent output capabilities. Klipsch is always known for that. So I think that would be a top contender. And then, of course, the higher end Samsung soundbars are kind of the de facto standard. And I will say, like the Q800 or Q900 series, you get up into those, like they are pretty good, but then they cost as much as a full surround sound system. So they better sound darn good for the type of prices they're charging. But I think those would be my top contenders.
We'll have time to talk them into stuff. I like that idea. That's so slick because it would not be easy. There's a very high ceilings to get speaker wires there unless you somehow could convince them to put equipment near there, and I just don't see where you'd put it.
I'll look
again when I'm over there. Yeah. But you can't help it. This is true for a lot of people. You want your room to look like the room should look. That's your first priority. But you want home theater. You want upgraded sound and not just television sound, little tinny speakers. So that's where we're at. We'll see what happens.
Don't get a crappy sound bar and realize that in a scenario like this, like I don't mind paying more for a soundbar than I would typically want to pay for a soundbar system when it brings along with it so many other benefits that make the connection and the aesthetics and everything so much better. Then it's like, okay, if I end up spending as much as separate speakers and a receiver and a subwoofer that are all wired would cost, it's like, well, that's okay, because I'm trying to get as close to that level of performance as I can while gaining the convenience and the aesthetics of the soundbar solution. So it makes sense to spend some decent money. But if you go Klipsch Flexus or you go higher end Samsung, I think they're going to be really happy.
I think so. That sounds like a great idea. Okay. And let me tell you, I'm so proud of how it turned out. I was so nervous. He's like, here's our brand new house. Come help us drill holes into it. Okay. I mean, I've put a few TVs on walls, but not many. And it just looks so good. And you can move it with just like 2 fingers on your thumb.
Yep. That's
and it slides down perfectly balanced. Ooh, love it. So there you go.
All right. Well, with those updates done, why don't we let people know how to get in touch with us? I already spoiled it earlier on, but you can email us at our email address, question@avrant.com. That has seemed to be working reliably for the past couple of weeks. So hooray. It is by far the best way to reach us, question@avrant.com. You can, of course, come to our website, which is avrant.com, and you can see all of our show notes there. We'll have links in those show notes to the top articles that we reference and products that we recommend. There's also a link to our Flickr album where you can see the photos that we're talking about. If you want to see those photos as we're talking about them, come to youtube.com/avrant, and you can see, 3 faces talking at you this week, plus those photos that I was mentioning while we're referencing them. So a convenient way to watch our show is on YouTube. You can also reach us on facebook.com/avrant podcast. And let's see. Socials, do all of us do? I don't know. I'm on Blue Sky, I guess. I'm First Reflect. Lee, you're on Blue Sky, right? Yeah?
Lee Oversky.
Okay, Lee Oversky.
Not Lee Overstreet on Blue Sky. It's Lee Oversky.
And how about you, Joe? I don't think you're on Blue Sky, but where can people find you?
Easiest is AVS Forum. It's JSK-MDWK.
All righty. So with that, why don't we hop into what we watched? We got lots to cover this week. So, Joe, why don't you start us off? What have you watched since we talked to you last?
Yeah, so we were planning a trip recently to Las Vegas, so we wanted to get in the mood for that. So we watched 2 movies on Kaleidescape, Indecent Proposal from the 90s. I think the last time I saw it was back in college. And then we saw 21, which was a card-counting blackjack movie, which was very interesting. Like both movies a lot. Indecent Proposal, Demi Moore, Woody Harrelson, Robert Redford. Really, a movie of its time, but very, very strong themes about for love or money, right? Mm-hmm. What's motivating them. We saw some of the same themes in 21. Kevin Spacey, great in that. Love him or hate him, but great actor. Again, you got to be careful here. But so picked up both of those on Kaleidescape for under $5. Great deals. And then over Valentine's Day, my wife wanted to go to the movies, and we had access to a Dolby Cinema. So went in and saw Wuthering Heights, which wasn't necessarily a Dolby Cinema required type of viewing for the content, but very strong presentation. Margot Robbie and the guy who was recently in Frankenstein. Can't remember his name.
Oh, yeah. Jacob Elordi.
Yeah, played the Heathcliff character. And again, a lot of the for love or for money, which would you follow your heart? Do you follow your wallet? What's going to be better? That movie had a lot of very also despicable behaviors. It was a lot about what making decisions and jealousy and what are your motivations and how cruel they can be to each other, to people you say you love. Lots of sucking face also in that Between the Stars. But then also really interesting use of color in that movie. You would see the entire screen just dripping in red almost in some of the scenes where Margot Robbie and some of the betrayals were very much about that. Her home, where it starts out, it's very black and white, very dreary. She gets married and moves into this rich mansion. Beautiful color. So from that standpoint, it was great to see that in Dolby Cinema. The drawback was it was so freaking loud. And didn't need to be, This all takes place on the moors in Scotland, I believe, and it's a lot of the weather is a big part of it, so that was neat in the Dolby Cinema with the overheads and all that, and the great surround sound. But just a lot of the music came on very, very heavy early on in the presentation. So
they like to compress that music and put it at 0 dBFS for some reason whenever they play music. So
it blew you out of your seat almost, which for a romantic drama, but it was if you're familiar with the story, it's definitely a tragic love story. So the kind of a for love or money was the theme of a lot of the movies we've been seeing lately. How about you guys?
Just before we move on to someone else, I did want to ask, because I mentioned about renting on Kaleidescape. So just what's been your experience like personally, Joe? Have you rented a lot, or do you just purchase every single time you watch?
So I cataloged a ton of my movies into the Kaleidescape when I had the Alto. So a lot of times it's cheaper for me to buy them than it is to rent them. So many of their movies, it's $4.92 for the movie. For some of the newer releases or recent releases, I think it's $7.95 or something like that for rentals. A lot of times, I have rented a few. Quality is the same, fantastic quality, and I know that you can also get, I think, half of the rental price back if you decide to purchase within a certain amount of time. Right. So I think it's a great tool for renting movies if that's what you're into. I'm a library guy. I'm a collector guy. I like to own all my movies. So I pretty much purchased everything on there. There's been a few horrors that I knew I would not go back, and those are the ones we rented, I think.
Okay. And yeah, it's important to mention that thing, like they don't reduce the quality of the rental versus the purchase, because for the people who have been saying like, where can I rent movies in full quality, equal to or in sometimes better than the physical disc, as opposed to something that is clearly a lower bit rate, if nothing else. Maybe you notice, maybe you don't, but it's objectively a lower bit rate when you're renting from any of the streaming services. So.
And depending on your internet connection and which pieces of gear you have, it can be there in 5 or 10 minutes. So it's not like you're waiting for the mail. It's not like when we used to go to Redbox or walk around Blockbuster or Hollywood Video.
I missed that though.
I use that phone in Hollywood Video many a time to call my wife and say, which one do you want to watch, this one or that one? But I
used to work at a video store, by the way. So the movie Clerks.
Same here.
As the vibe. I used to work at a video store, and it was quite an interesting time.
Spent a summer at Mr. Video. What'd you guys watch?
Yeah, well, I'll go next because we'll wrap up with Lee, and he had a little bit of a chat earlier on. So I am continuing on watching my Oscar nominees for this year. So I got up to Hamnet. So this is starring Paul Mescal, who would have seen most recently in Gladiator 2. He was the lead in that. He was also one of the stars in the show Normal People, and also starring Jessie Buckley, who you would have seen in Women Talking, and she was in the show Chernobyl. This movie very much is the two of them, William Shakespeare and his wife. Her name is spelled as Agnes, but it's Agnes is how she pronounces it. So this was all based on a novel by Maggie O'Farrell, and then Chloe Zhao wrote the screenplay for this movie and directed it. We know Chloe Zhao from Marvel's The Eternals, right? But a bunch of indie films before that got a lot of acclaim for that, and then got on Disney's radar, and they picked her up to direct The Eternals. But so that was certainly the biggest budget movie that she's done. How historically accurate this really is to William Shakespeare's life is basically always going to be a question mark, because we just don't have a ton of historical records from 1599, 1600. We certainly don't have photos and videos, so we don't know for sure. Now, I'm guessing that Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley are like slightly better looking than the real life people, because those are two very pretty people in this movie. But that's okay. They're not hard to look at. And maybe what bothered me the most about this movie is in the portrayal of William Shakespeare in day-to-day life, in this period of first meeting his wife, wooing her, getting married, having their children, and then until their children are about 11 years old. That's sort of the time frame of this movie. So it's not like a complete biography of William Shakespeare by any means, and it's not meant to be. But I didn't get any sense in the day-to-day life that he had the language that he clearly wrote in all of his plays inside of him as portrayed by Paul Mescal in this movie. Like, I'm sure the goal was to portray him as just a regular person who happened to be an exceedingly skilled poet and playwright. But there was just no sense, to me anyway, watching this movie, that language was within this portrayal of William Shakespeare whatsoever. He was such a normal guy who spoke in such a normal way that it seemed unrealistic that the language we know of William Shakespeare was anywhere inside him. Now, the counterpoint to that is, well, what if they had him speak in anything close to a Shakespearean way? That would have maybe seemed very unrealistic. So I can see that they were trying to tread that balance, but I think maybe they erred a little bit too far on the side of he's just a completely normal dude, and then he's also William Shakespeare. It's like it's a superpower, and it doesn't quite entirely make sense. Now, Jessie Buckley as Agnes, the type of, and I don't know how close this is to historical accuracy or not, they portray her as a very, like, some people even think she's a witch. That she's very into like herbal remedies and go to the forest and commune with nature and that type of a person. Now, I forgive a lot in this because it was 1598 and 1600s, and what did an actual doctor in your town really do when someone came down with the plague? Yeah, so the notion that this woman is going to this woman is going to take it upon herself to, administer herbs and remedies like that. I'm like, you know what? Really not that unreasonable. So I can forgive a whole bunch of that. But of course, what we do know is historically accurate is that, William Shakespeare and his wife had a son and daughter, and the son, named Hamnet, died at an early age. That we know for sure did happen, and so having this movie titled Hamnet, we know what it's going to be about in that way. And so, I mean, all of the circumstances surrounding it is completely. I'm not going to say made up. It's reasonable sort of speculation about what likely happened, but we don't have a strong, this is for sure what happened historical record. And then they weave in some of the spirituality, little bit of belief in the superstitious and the supernatural and stuff kind of gets woven in a little bit in there as well. So I wanted to mention the child actors, in particular, Olivia Lynes as Judith, who is the twin sister of Hamnet. Hamnet was portrayed by Jacoby Juppé. So the two of them, really, really strong child actors, but Olivia in particular, she wasn't in a ton of scenes, but every time she was in a scene, I was just watching her. I was just watching that young actress. So hopefully big things ahead for Olivia as an actress, because I thought she was a standout in this movie. So, as you can imagine, if you know what happened to Hamnet in real life, it's this is a pretty darn depressing and gut-wrenching movie at points. But myself watching it, I did feel as though it teetered into melodrama at times. But what I will say is, this movie ends exceedingly strongly. It is a fantastic ending, last act and final scene to this movie. And it just makes me realize again and again, ending your movie on a strong note is really important. It really, really colors in the overall impression of the movie. If you have a movie that's going along like gangbusters for 8 nights, like I've described in movies before, and then it just has a crappy ending, it's it leaves you with a completely different feeling to a movie that I was this is maybe a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, honestly, as how was I feeling for it. But the ending is so strong, I'm okay, so that's why it was nominated for a Best Picture. It's it really was about the ending, which, granted, if it didn't have the build-up before it, wouldn't land as strongly. But I was just the most of the movie on its own, I was kind of hemming and hawing, honestly, personally, a little bit about it. But watchable all throughout. The performances are strong. I didn't love the portrayal of William Shakespeare, but that's not Paul Mescal's fault. That was the script and how they chose to portray him as just such a normal dude. So
I've met some playwrights. They're pretty normal.
Oh yeah. It's just
not always.
I think there would have been an inkling that he had something a little bit more inside.
A little more eccentricity, huh?
Just I don't know. Again, I don't know historically accurate or not. I just know he didn't quite look that dashingly good looking. But everybody did look like they maybe smelled bad, so I think that was accurate. Anyway, that was Hamnet. Lee, what have you been watching?
Well, I did finish Severance. There's 2 seasons. And holy cow, I'm so glad that you told me to take another look at that show.
Yeah.
Again, don't want to ruin anything for anyone, but that last episode especially was just such great randomness and surrealism and emotions, good and bad, and ended on a cliffhanger while I'm well, I guess it's another year, and hopefully I'll remember everything.
That is the downside.
And not have to watch 2 seasons again in a year to understand where we left off. But man, oh man, what a clever show. Okay. I'm just so happy about it because, you can't write a completely unique sci-fi or thriller today without pulling from the past, right? You can't. Mm-hmm. But this one does pretty good. I love a good, time travel kind of stories or surrealist stuff, really brainy, weird thrillers. And man, this one just did stuff that I wasn't expecting and haven't seen before. Yeah, that scene in 2001 where all of a sudden he's in a weird, almost hotel room or bedroom or kitchen.
That's right. Yep, he's entered the monolith.
Yeah, you're in the monolith and it's all super surreal. And what does this mean? That vibe is all in Severance. There are times where you're what is this supposed to even be? And I didn't know it was going to do that. So I'm very happy about that. Very, very glad I watched that show. And we talked about other aspects of that last time, so I won't go into that again. But I also am almost done watching Station 11 on HBO. Now, speaking of Shakespearean actors, if you've always thought to yourself, what would the apocalypse look like to a group of theater students? I think this is your series to watch. Because actors play a very important part in this, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And it is told with flashbacks, so you're bouncing between different eras of a bad thing happens, then in 20 years, here's what's going on, then in 40 years, and then back. There's hallucinating that you're in the past. So the storytelling is odd, a little jarring sometimes, but I gotta say, I'm not loving it, but I'm digging it. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, I'm enjoying seeing what they've done with it. Mm-hmm. And some of the characters I like, and I want to see what happens to them. Yep. But the overall show sometimes is making me roll my eyes.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
You know, this seems too unrealistic. Why is this like that? And it seems that this is a show for people who like actors and theatre.
Sounds right up my alley.
Spelled with the R-E at the end. Yes. So it really does follow a group of actors, and they're in the future post-apocalypse still trying to put on a traveling show. I don't think that gives away too much. And, you know, there are good and bad things happen and crazy things, but it's very character driven.
Okay.
And like you might have said in the Hamnet movie, there's some melodrama. A lot of melodrama, a lot of emotions, and people expressing their emotions with each other. And so
actors never.
Right. Like, so it's a little over the top on the acting, but I dig it. And it also is a little different in its treatment of an apocalyptic future after a bad thing happens.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a different angle, and that's kind of fun for me. But, does that make sense? Like, I'm liking it, but I'm not loving it. And I've got to see how it ends.
That's fair.
But I have my phone in my hand a little bit while I'm watching it, right?
So your audio and video, all right.
Right. So audio and video is pretty good. You can tell this is not a super high budget thing, but they've done a good job with it. They kept the scale of the cinematography to where they didn't try to do too much. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's very human scale. There's some big scenes and some big effects that they did pay for, and it works, but I'm not going to say anything about the audio or video is anything to write home about.
Okay.
A lot of intense, emotional music happens, of course, because people have intense emotions in this show. So I liked it. But I think I've told you before, I don't ever remember any actor's name. I don't know who anybody is or what they did. But I was watching, wait a minute, where do I know her from? Why do I like her? And then it dawned on me, wait a minute, Halt and Catch Fire, 2014. Mm-hmm. What a great series that was. If you get a chance to go back in time, watch that one. Halt and Catch Fire, if you're a computer nerd at all, especially good. Like my kind of age computer nerd that remembers when computers were simpler and dial-up was slower, then you might like Halt and Catch Fire. But yeah, Mackenzie Davis is main character in Station 11, and she was very significant in Halt and Catch Fire, and she's very intense.
I like her very much. She's from Vancouver, from my neck of the woods. So,
dude, you're gonna love Station 11. You are. You're gonna love it.
Easily.
I'm telling you. Yeah, go for it. Go for it. I dig it. So I'll let you know how it goes. But so far, it's clever, and I need to know how it ends.
Very good. Well, with that, let's get into the rest of the podcast here. We're going to thank our listeners of the week before we go any further, folks who have supported this podcast in some way. So one of the ways you can support us, you come to avrant.com, our website. Over on the right-hand side of the desktop version, there is a little image of a cup of coffee, and it says Support AVRant. That'll take you to PayPal, and you can make a one-time PayPal donation there if you'd like to. Only Tom sees who does those things. I still don't have access to that, so I have no idea if we had any PayPal donations this week, but if I missed any, we'll mention next week. You can also support us financially on Patreon. That is patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So we've got 121 patrons over there, and John in Ireland is one of them. So thank you all so much for that financial support. And then we've got folks who have just supported, given us notes of gratitude and encouragement. So we want to thank them. Kenny emailed us, and he previously asked us how to find an installer in his area to ceiling mount his projector after running into an issue when he tried to do it himself. And our very own Joe Klusnick here pointed him to the CDO website. And I suggested a couple of places in particular via email. Neither of those actually worked out, but he did find a place called Audio and Video Solutions in Cumming, Georgia, who he says did a good job. He liked their technicians just as people. So happily, he has been enjoying his theater and his properly hung projector. So that is fantastic. And thank you for the update, Kenny. Infinite Gary also sent us a note. Last week, I said that you could use aluminum foil in place of jumpers that connect dual binding posts on the backs of speakers, and you'd never hear the difference. But don't forget, this is from Gary, using heavy-duty aluminum foil that has been lined with a piece of parchment paper helps you to make sure that the frequencies don't stick together. So, crucial audiophile stuff.
Same with cookies.
Important. That's right. That's right.
Now I want cookies.
Good tip. Thank you, Gary.
There are some in the freezer. I know they're there, and they cook at 350 for 15 minutes.
They sure do. Kevin wrote to us and he just says, congrats on 1,000+ episodes. Because, yes, if you've been keeping count individually, we crossed the actual 1,000 episode mark quite a while ago, but we're still not calling it episode 1,000 because we got stuff cooking in the background. Davide recommended the game Cairn on PS5, or is that Karn? How do we pronounce that? Cairn?
Cairn.
It's Cairn.
I would think.
I said it right the first time. Anyway, that's on PS5 and PC exclusively. It's all about rock climbing, so we'll have to tell Tom about that when he's back next week. He doesn't have a gaming PC. Well, his son has a gaming PC. Maybe he can confiscate it, but he doesn't have a PS5, so it would have to be on a gaming PC if Tom is going to play that. But thank you for the recommendation, Davide. And Greg wanted to thank us for the honesty in our commentary. It's feeling like so many other people are just influencers these days, so looking to sell something or drum up hype for clicks. So he thanks us, and you know what? I'm gonna to give a little teaser, Greg. I think you're really going to like what we do once we get to episode 1,000 that you said that. So Karl, best of luck to Tom with the treatment of his back. Karl can sympathize, and on the TV repair side of things, he thinks it's crazy that Samsung did not just quickly replace the entire TV, and he agreed with my review of F1 the movie. He was less than impressed to the point that he only saw it twice in IMAX Grand Theater.
Just twice.
Which, it's a real indictment coming from Karl, because normally he sees movies like 5 times, and then a whole bunch of times at home. So only seeing it twice, my goodness.
I'm surprised Karl doesn't forget where he lives because he's at the theater so much.
We also got a note of gratitude from John. So yeah, all of those names. We had Kenny, Infinite Gary, Kevin, Davide, Greg, Karl, and John. Thank you so much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We really appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. And so with that, we're going to hop into the news. Joe, why don't you take our first news story? We got so much news this week, so let's try and go through it relatively quickly.
I don't know if I can read as fast as Rob, but I'll try. As we briefly mentioned last week, Arcam announced a whole new series of products. The Arcam Radia series receivers, well, technically integrated amplifiers since they don't have AM/FM tuners built in, pre-pros, amps, and speakers. So let's go through the details. The new audio-video amplifier lineup starts with the AVA15, priced at $4,500. It has 9 channels of Class D amplification built in, 100 watts per channel, but it can process up to 11 speaker channels for a 7.1.4 configuration. There's only one dedicated subwoofer pre-out, and while some sites have reported that you could reduce your number of speakers in order to have more subwoofers, Arcam's own website specifications make us think otherwise, which we'll explain in more detail later. Dolby Atmos, including height virtualization and DTS-X, are on board, but no Auro 3D or IMAX Enhanced. 7 HDMI 2.1 inputs and 2 HDMI 2.1 outputs support 4K 120, VRR, eARC, and every standard flavor of HDR, but not Dolby Vision 2. The rest of the inputs are simplified with just 3 pairs of RCA stereo inputs and 2 each of Toslink and coax digital, plus an Ethernet jack and a USB-C input on the front. Bluetooth support is a cut above those supporting Auracast so that you can output the Bluetooth signal to multiple pairs of Bluetooth Auracast headphones all at once. The included room correction is Dirac Live, full range, and it comes with a measurement microphone in the box along with a 16-foot USB cable. And all of the new Radia series processors can be upgraded to Dirac Live Bass Control and Dirac Live Art. You have to pay extra for those, though. The front panel has a large 6.5-inch color display on the left, touch-sensitive controls in the middle, and a large volume dial on the right. The finish is black with yellow trim accents. The black and yellow color pattern extends to the compact but backlit Bluetooth remote, and setup can be performed using the new Arcam Radia app. Somebody else take a turn.
All right, Lee, why don't you continue on?
Oh, sure. Next is the AVA-25, priced at $5,500. Still has 9 channels of amplification built in, but 125 watts per channel. And now they are Class AB, and they run off a toroidal power supply, but it can process up to 15 speaker channels for a full 9.1.6 configuration. Same deal as the AVA-15 with the single dedicated subwoofer pre-out. Dolby Atmos and DTS-X are here, of course. There's no specific mention of DTS-X Pro, though, so we're not sure about that yet. The AVA-25 does get RO3D and IMAX Enhanced, though. Still 7 HDMI 2.1 inputs, but now there are 3 HDMI 2.1 outputs, one of which can be used for a separate Zone 2. Speaking of which, a pair of RCA Zone 2 pre-outs have been added. The AVA-35 is priced at $7,000. Once again, it has 9 channels of amplification built in, but now they are Class G, still rated at 125 watts per channel into 8 ohms, but now it can deliver more power into 4 ohms when more than 2 channels are driven simultaneously. The DACs and speaker binding posts have been upgraded, but the big change is that all 16 of its pre-outs are fully reassignable. And Arcam specifically mentions being able to assign multiple subwoofers to any of the 6 channels that are labeled as height 1, 2, or 3 by default.
Yeah, so that was why I was questioning whether or not you can actually just decrease your speaker channel count and assign those to subwoofers instead on the AVA-15 and the AVA-25. I'm not saying for sure that you can't, because they do have pre-outs on the backs of those models that are labeled as assignable, so maybe? But it's just the fact that, Arcam's own website specifically mentions how you can reassign the pre-outs. Not literally all of them, but 6 of them can be reassigned as separate subwoofer pre-outs on the AVA-35, and there's no mention of that same feature, like height 1 and height 2 limited or anything like that. It's it doesn't mention being able to do that with the AVA-15 or the AVA-25. And then I was also given that the AVA-25 can already go to 16 channels and power 9 of them, I'm that's the same between the AVA-25 and the AVA-35. So what's the real incentive to pay an extra $1,500 and go up to the AVA-35? I'm well, if it's the one that can actually do genuinely individual separate multiple subwoofers, then that would be certainly a selling point there. So I have my suspicion that that's what's going on, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'm happy to correct ourselves once we find out the information for real. But that was it for the not quite AV receivers. They're technically integrated amps, because to be a receiver, you have to have a radio tuner built in. These have an internet radio tuner built in, but not an over-the-air AM/FM tuner built in.
Can we see the front panel
receiving.
Again?
Rear panel of which?
No, the front panel on Arcam.
Oh, yeah, front panel here.
I love it.
It's sharp looking, but I think the safe in my last hotel room looked really similar to that.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it does have that little 9-button touch panel in the middle of there that kind of looks like a safe. But yeah, I kind of dig that they got the yellow trim. It makes them stand out a little bit, so a little bit different there.
Boy, if I had seen that as younger me when I first started looking at audio video equipment, say as a teenager, I would have lost my damn mind. I would have been like, "What is that? Wow!" And here we're at a point where a screen can be on a thing and it doesn't blow your mind.
Not at all.
Like I would have lost it completely, and the fact it just looks so cool. And so I think it looks awesome.
Well, why don't we circle back to Joe? Why don't you continue on with the rest of this lineup here in the Radia series?
Okay, and as you might be able to predict, the AVP-45 is a dedicated pre-pro that basically removes the 9 channels of amplification from the AVA-35 and puts 16 XLR pre-outs in their place. The price actually comes down $1,000 though to $6,000, plus you get more 12-volt trigger ports and 1 pair of balanced XLR inputs. All of the new processors are scheduled to be available through dealers in Q3 of 2026. And since you obviously want some amplification to go along with the AVP-45 or to expand the channel count on any of the AV amplifier models, Arcam also announced the Radia PA4 and Radia PA9 amplifiers. They're priced at $1,500 and $5,000 respectively. The PA4 is 4 channels of Class D amplification, taking up only 1 rack unit of height. No images have been provided yet, but you can count on it having the same black with yellow trim appearance. And wattage wasn't specified, but we're guessing it'll be same 100 watts per channel. The PA9 is, you guessed it, 9 channels of Class G amplification. Anyone want to take bets if it's rated the same output as the AVA-35 amplifiers?
I think that's probably the most likely thing. It would seem reasonable.
Those two won't be coming to dealers until Q4.
Yeah, so some early announcements here, but Arcam with a whole refresh of their electronics. They already had some dedicated 2-channel gear with this sort of appearance and calling those Radia, so they're expanding out to the full multi-channel units with this, but that is not the end of the news for Arcam. Joe, did you want to continue on, or do you want to hand off to Lee?
I'll let Lee go.
Okay. Still sticking with Arcam, the new Radia series also brings with it a whole Radia speaker lineup. There are 2 bookshelf models, a center, 2 tower models, and a subwoofer. No on-walls or wedge-shaped speakers or Atmos modules here. All of the new Arcam Radia series speakers come in a black finish using real walnut veneer. They also have a subtle yellow trim accent along the bottom. That makes sense. So they match the other Radia series components. The cabinets are curved and internally braced. And is it just us, or do the waveguides for the tweeters look an awful lot like Revel's design?
Yeah, Joe, did you look at those like I did? And I'm like, are those Revel speakers?
Very much so. And they're coming out of the same engineering facilities. It's all a Harman stuff. So
it is all Harman.
Yeah. Gotta be. All of the speaker models use the same 1-inch DCC tweeter. It's an aluminum dome combined with a ceramic material, so DCC stands for Deep Ceramic Composite, and lending even more credence to the notion that Revel might have had a hand in designing these new speakers, all of the woofers are made from MCC, or Micro Ceramic Composite, which is a material that Revel has used in many of their drivers. The smallest model is the R15 bookshelf. U.S. prices have not been announced yet, but going by the UK and Euro price tags, a pair should cost somewhere around $2,000 to $2,300. It uses the 1-inch DCC tweeter in its waveguide and a single 5¼ inch MCC woofer in a 2-way design. The tweeter crosses over to the woofer at 1.8 kilohertz, and it's a 6 ohm nominal rating with 150 watt power handling and 85 decibel sensitivity, 2.83 volts per 1 meter. There's a port on the rear, and we suspect just 1 pair of binding posts.
Didn't have an image of the back of this one speaker for some reason, but early announcements, like I said.
Right, early. The R25 bookshelf goes up to a 6.5-inch MCC woofer, bringing with it 10 hertz deeper extension, claimed down to 43 hertz, but at minus 6 dB, not minus 3, and 200 watt power handling. Price should be in the $3,000 to $3,500 per pair range, and this model has dual binding posts with metal jumpers included.
The Audiophile say throw them in the trash, Lee.
That's right. And use your tinfoil and parchment paper. The R35C center uses 2 of the 5¼ inch MCC woofers and a horizontal MTM design. It's a 2-way speaker with a single rear port and 1 pair of binding posts, so we expect a certain crowd online will be raking it over the coals for those design choices. Price should be around $2,000 each.
And since this one uses the 5¼ inch drivers and has a single pair of binding posts, that's what made me suspect that the smallest of the bookshelf speakers, maybe that one is also single binding post design. But who knows what they'll do? Maybe they're like, nope, bookshelves get dual binding posts no matter what. I don't know yet.
You're probably right. The R35 Tower is the first 3-way design in the lineup. It uses
did they run out of numbers? You have an R35C and then you have an R35 Tower? Why?
Are they not encouraging people to use them together?
Yeah.
I guess.
I think that's what that is usually done for. Just, it matches. It matches. Timbre matching, right? It should sound great together. Has the same number. The R35 Tower is the first 3-way design in the lineup. It uses a dedicated 5¼ inch DCC mid-range driver, same material as the tweeter, and then 3 5¼ inch MCC woofers. Driver crossover frequencies are at 350 hertz and 2.1 kilohertz. Power handling goes up to 225 watts, and sensitivity increases to 87 decibels, still 6 ohms nominal. And dual ports and dual binding posts around back, priced somewhere around $2,500 to $3,000 each. And moving up to the R45 Tower, it's much the same, but with a 6.5 inch DCC mid-range and 3 6.5 inch MCC woofers. The driver crossover frequencies are lower, though, at 275 hertz and 1.7 kilohertz, and power handling goes up to 250 watts with 88 decibel sensitivity. Price should be around $3,500 to $4,000 each. Mm-hmm. Does it feel like it's the Taco Bell method of mixing and matching 5 different ingredients?
I mean, it's all the same driver materials, so yeah, there shouldn't be drastic timbral differences between these. Also, if it is Revel behind the designs, that would be shocking to no end.
Yeah, the yellow stripe is the little extra guacamole.
It is.
Lastly, there's the R25B subwoofer for around $3,000 to $3,500 each. It's a 10-inch rear-ported design with a 750-watt RMS, 1,500-watt peak Class D amplifier. Extension is only spec'd at 26 hertz, and that's the claimed minus 6 dB point, not minus 3 dB.
Yeah.
So given the price points of the Arcam Radia series, we will almost certainly recommend pairing any of the speakers with a different brand of subwoofer.
Agreed.
That'll be my recommendation, because that does not sound like the top value in subwoofers there.
For $3,000.
Yeah.
For
Or maybe more.
$3,000.
Maybe
Yeah,
more.
possibly more. Yeah. No, you can do better than that. The entire Arcam Radia series of speakers has an extra trick up its sleeve when you connect them to Arcam Radia series electronics, though. Arcam has pre-programmed AEQ, or anechoic EQ, that acts as an instant speaker frequency response correction based on Harman's anechoic speaker measurements and entering which speaker model you've connected to your Arcam Radia amplifier or pre-pro. Wisely, it is meant to stack along with Dirac live room correction, so you apply AEQ first to bring your Radia speaker in line with Harman's expected anechoic measurement results, and then you apply Dirac live on top of that to correct for room reflections.
I like that.
I don't hate that, yeah.
In theory, but at the same time, like, why aren't your speakers just anechoically flat to begin with? It's I'm not entirely. I mean, I've seen Klipsch and Onkyo do a thing like this too, although that was mainly to set the crossover at typically a much too low frequency, because where you set the crossover from your speakers to subs is much more about your room acoustics than it is about the capabilities of the speakers themselves. But for the people who are just like, I want my speakers to play as low as they are able to, not worrying about how they couple with the room whatsoever. That's what Klipsch and Onkyo were aiming for when they did that. But yeah, this seems different. So they're basically like, okay, we know how these speakers measure anechoically, so we can pre-target what the speaker correction EQ will be, and then we'll put the room correction on top of that. So in theory, I kind of like it, but I'm still they also made sure to say, don't worry, you can still connect these speakers to any AV receiver or amplifier, and inherently they're already good speakers. So seems a little bit strange to, like, I don't know, it feels like talking out of both ends, doesn't it? It's
it's like claiming that it's like subtly saying they need a little extra EQ.
Well, but they've been doing it with JBL synthesis, and even like a lot of the Crown amplifiers had a lot of the JBL speakers and some of the Pro stuff even already pre-EQ'd built into the amplifier. So I think there are advantages to having the research, building it and testing it, knowing the science behind it, and then building the rest of the pieces that go along to drive it. So
Yep. That's the notion behind it for sure. And yeah, sometimes there are things that you can correct electronically more easily than you can correct physically, or with a passive crossover. So if you're just like, okay, we know that we're going to do these things, and there's this one little wiggle in the frequency response that, to passively correct would, cost another $10,000 or something like that. They're like, well, we can just pre-correct that electronically, and then we're off to the races. So if that's what's going on, I don't mind it at all. Why don't I go ahead and start the next news story, since we're kind of bouncing around here? So Arendal has released a brand new 1610 Series 8 lineup of speakers. As that number implies, it slots in between the flagship 1528 Series 8 and the 1723 THX series, which actually started things off for Arendal. But one look and you'll instantly recognize the trickle-down designs of the 1528 Series 8. There are only 4 models in the lineup. There's a 1610 Bookshelf 8, a 1610 Center 8, a 1610 Tower 8, and the 1610 Slim 8, which is an on-wall model. All of them come in either a black or a white finish, and the cabinets are all made of thick, internally braced HDF, not MDF, high-density fiberboard, with the front baffles being a laminate structure of HDF and butyl rubber that's nearly 2 inches thick on those front baffles.
All right.
Speaking of those front baffles, they are curved, and the overall looks are clearly similar to the flagship 1528 Series 8, but unlike the 1528, the 1610 front baffles are only curved in one direction. The 1528 baffles are curved both vertically and horizontally. So, as you might expect, all 4 of the 1610 speaker models share the exact same drivers. The tweeter is a 28 millimeter, so that's slightly larger than 1 inch diameter, 1.1 inch, aluminum magnesium dome. that is protected by a carefully designed perforated cover that helps to make its off-axis dispersion more even. In the 1528 series, it's a lithium magnesium. What do you call that? What's the word I'm looking for? When you put two metals together, that word is escaping.
Alloy.
Alloy. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Joe. So yeah, very unusual. I haven't seen lithium magnesium before, but the 1528 used that. But yeah, aluminum magnesium has become a little bit more common, and it's kind of second only to beryllium in terms of like the stiffness to weight ratios. So yeah, reasonably common material being used there now. That tweeter has the waveguide. It expands the horizontal dispersion while limiting the vertical dispersion. So we've seen that in a lot of other designs. The tweeter housing is also integrated along with the mid-range driver, which is a 5-inch carbon fiber driver. And that mid-range driver is completely sealed in its own enclosure inside there with a very, very strong magnet behind it to give it high sensitivity. Finally, the woofers are all 8-inch diameter aluminum, and all 4 of the models are full 3-way designs. So we can start off. There's the 1610 Bookshelf 8. It sells for $3,600 a pair. Shipping is included in that price. You do have the option to purchase them individually if you want to. Each weighs in at nearly 36 pounds. So these are pretty hefty bookshelf speakers, and the footprint is nearly 1 foot by 1 foot. Not quite, but pretty close. So these are not little itty-bitty bookshelf speakers. No. These are stand mount speakers, to be honest, and they have some dedicated stands that are not inexpensive to go along with them. Around back, there is a single port that can optionally be plugged if you want to, and there's a single set of binding posts. Amazing, not dual binding posts. It's 4 ohm nominal impedance and only 85 dB sensitivity with 2.83 volts input at the 4 ohm nominal impedance, right? So take down another 3 dB from that if you were talking about 8 ohm nominal impedance. So yeah, like 82 dB sensitivity on the lower side, but it has 400 watt power handling. So loud output is possible from these speakers, but basically by brute force. You're going to need some beefy amps if you want these to play loud. Joe, why don't you carry on with some of this more lineup here?
Yeah, the 1610 Center 8 goes for $2,300 each. 2 of the 8-inch drivers go on either side of the vertical tweeter plus mid-range stack. Around back, there's still just a single port and 1 pair of binding posts. Adding the second 8-inch woofer increases sensitivity to 88.6 dB with 2.83 volts input and 500 watt power handling. Each 1610 Center 8 weighs over 53 pounds.
That's not a nothing center. Yeah, they're not skimping on the weight. If you equate weight with quality.
You're not hanging that from the MantelMount.
That's right.
Okay, the 1610 Tower 8 is priced at $7,600 per pair. Singles are available. Each tower weighs 100 pounds and stands just a hair under 4 feet tall. Arendal themselves say the best listening height is with your ears level with the mid-range driver and slightly below the tweeter, so this extra height is a benefit. With 3 of the 8-inch woofers, sensitivity is spec'd at 89.5 dB with 2.83 volts input and 800 watts power handling. The single port, which can optimally be plugged, is one. Sorry, optimally.
That should be optionally. Sorry, that's a typo on my part.
Can be plugged is on the bottom of the cabinet. The included outriggers with damping rubber, not spikes, feet gives the port its required clearance and consistent distance to the closest boundary. And there's just 1 pair of binding posts. No jumpers for audiophiles to feel like they need to throw away. I got to tell you guys a story about that a little bit. 1610 Slim 8 sells for $2,800 per pair. You can buy 1 at a time if you want to. It's the only always sealed model in the lineup, and at 6.5 inches deep, it's meant to be wall mounted. To that end, its single pair of binding posts are recessed in the back, with a small channel cut out below them to allow speaker wires to be connected without ruining the flush mount. A Visa 100 mount is included, but since it's a Visa mounting pattern, you have the option of using a small monitor mount to give your angling and aiming freedom. Extension is rated down to 70 Hz, and sensitivity is at 86.5 dB. Still 4 ohms nominal. Power handling is 300 watts, though. So again, brute force can deliver high output capabilities. All 4 models were designed using Klippel measurements, and Arendal notes that they focused on achieving their desired estimated in-room response via those Klippel measurements rather than focusing primarily on on-axis frequency response, like most previous speaker designs. The whole series is available to purchase and shipping now.
Yeah, so some big announcements over the past couple of weeks, like well past CES, but we're not letting up on the news. We got brand new speakers, we got brand new receivers and amplifiers from Arcam. So yeah, been a lot of news to cover.
Did we get the weight of the slim ones? Is it like I'm impressed with the weight? I'm kind of curious what the weight of the slim ones are.
I forgot to note that down. It'll be less than any of them, but it's still HDF and a 2-inch thick front baffle, so they're not going to be light.
Is it just me who's like completely fooled by weight? Like if I pick up a speaker or
if
a component
heavy is
that's
good.
really heavy,
right?
Heavy's good, right? I mean, I suppose it would resist vibrations that it wasn't supposed to be making.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And something about a hefty, hard to lift piece of electronics just God feels good.
So I just want to know what happened in 1610 in Norway, because all of these speaker lines are named after the years of historical events in the country, correct?
Yeah, they had to figure out something of significance that happened between 1723 and 1528. So 1610 is when the town of Arendal was legally allowed to open up their trade with international partners. So they're like, whatever, it's a significant date in Arendal, the town's history, and it fits in between 1723 and 1528. So they went with 1610.
Thank you.
Leah, why don't you wrap us up with our final news story? And we got to move. My God, we haven't even got to the questions yet. We're over an hour, but
I can talk unbelievably fast if I need to. Well, the price of anything with RAM and an SSD in it just keeps rising. It's making me sick to my stomach. My computer has to last forever. But Sony thinks they might just have the perfect solution when it comes to their PlayStation hardware, in the UK at least for now. Why pay all that money to buy a PS5 console when you could lease a PS5 and own nothing? Hooray!
Yay!
Oh my God. Via direct.playstation.com, you can enter into a 12-month, 24-month, 36-month, or month-to-month lease agreement for a PS5 digital edition, PS5 1 terabyte with disk drive, PS5 Pro, PlayStation VR 2, PlayStation Portal, or even the DualSense Edge controller, because who would ever buy a controller when you could just commit to renting one that you have to return, right?
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, they show you their lowest per month prices first, but this is a leasing agreement we're talking about here. Those prices are only if you commit to the 36-month plan. My God. If you decide to rent for only 24 months or 12 months, the price is higher. And if you rent month to month, well, you can go right ahead and pay more than double compared to that first price you'll see, which is for the 36-month contract.
Yeah.
They do say that you can connect them at the end of the lease period, contact them at the end of the lease period to find out how much it will cost you to finally buy the system you've been leasing outright. But they specifically say that the price is based on current market value and does not include the payments you've already made.
What cars were bad enough.
Oh, jeez. Just no. And if you enter into the 1, 2, or 3 year plan and then decide you want to cancel early, well, there's a fee to do that, of course. They can provide a simple chart to show you ahead of time exactly how much. No, of course not. Nobody could ever understand that. It all depends on how many payments you've already made and how many you have left. But don't worry, the most they will charge you as an early cancellation fee is 18 times your monthly rate. So nice of them to limit themselves like that, right? If you accidentally damage the unit you're renting, they can send you a replacement device for a fair fee. How much exactly? Who knows? Yeah. We're sure it will be fair to their business. And if you don't want to risk potentially having to pay that fair fee, no problem. Just commit to paying an additional $2.50 to £4 per month for insurance. Yes. If you escape all of those pitfalls and your lease simply ends as you expected, you can return your PlayStation hardware for free. How generous, huh?
Yeah.
And be done. But by default, you'll just automatically roll over into a month-to-month lease until you cancel. At least your monthly rate stays the same at that point, though, rather than more than doubling. Of course, you probably have to cancel by carrier pigeon. Who knows? You could return the hardware you've been renting and upgrade to whatever is the latest and greatest at the time for whatever the current prices are then, of course. Or you can do that current market price buyout with all of your rental fees having counted for nothing. But they really don't seem to want to even mention that option since they only market the other three. Will this be a smashing success in the UK? No. Will we see plans like this expanded to lots of other countries? Yes.
I hope not.
Oh, it's a coming because
Yep.
somebody will fall for it every time. Can you ever truly own something as magical as a PlayStation?
Yeah.
Or is it the games that own us? Let's all find out together, shall we?
Yeah.
This is horrifying. Don't do it.
Does it matter how many miles you have on your PS5 when you return it? You know, is that...
Oh yeah, they did say reasonable wear and tear is accepted. So yeah,
I will
great.
say that this phenomenon of renting has been more popular in the UK than in the United States and other countries. My same friend that got the MantelMount, he's from England. His mom, back in the day, owned a television rental business, and people would rent televisions and rent VCRs.
Oh yeah.
And just like you could get a bigger TV if you knew you were going to watch soccer playoffs.
Sure.
And then take it back.
Rented for a day, a month, a week, a year?
I think it was sometimes weekly, usually monthly.
I remember renting a Laserdisc player in college to watch the extended version of Aliens.
Right. And at the video store I used to work at way back in the day, we rented video players. So if you didn't have a VCR, you could rent the movies and the video players. And oh man, I just remember these three guys would come in all together and rent one stack of movies and a player. And I just didn't ask a lot of questions. They were very friendly.
Roommates.
And not my business. Right. Maybe some people are open to the idea of renting a piece of electronics like that over there simply because it used to happen, and it never did here. I don't think in the United States. I never heard.
I've no problem with rent to own, where if you total up the all of the payments that you made, you end up paying more than if you had just bought it outright. But at the same time, if you had to save up, it would have taken you however long, and then you couldn't be enjoying the product while you did it. So I don't have a huge problem with rent to own. I think that kind of makes sense. But like this is you own nothing. I mean, as everybody's making the meme joke, right? You're going to own nothing and you're going to love it. So it's like
But renting to own and leasing keeps you behind the game. If you can deny yourself for a while and not have the latest and greatest for a while and do the thing where you save up and then buy without any interest or without lease payments, rental, and so forth, you get ahead of the game. And then you can have better stuff in the future.
I can't imagine that Xbox is not going to do this with their next console, or maybe they're even going to start it with the Series X now that they've just raised the prices on all of those consoles. But like with their next one for sure, because their whole aim is to get everybody to subscribe to Xbox Game Pass, even though they keep raising the price on that. So like, don't own your games, just subscribe to them. Never own an actual game. Constantly subscribe. Why would you own the hardware? Rent that too, right? So
with our car. With the Tesla, they just ended the option to purchase full self-driving outright.
Yeah.
When you get the car, and you can only subscribe
to it. Yes,
to full self-driving.
I don't love this subscription feature. Joe, you had one thing to say, and then we should move on to comments.
Well, just real quick, AVRant is not qualified to provide financial advice, nor does this constitute that.
True. These are personal opinions only. Yes, good disclaimer.
Sure.
So let's read the next comment, and then I'll tell you guys a quick story.
Yes, go for it, Joe.
Jonathan enjoyed us talking about speaker binding post jumpers and internal speaker wiring last week. He points us to an article posted by Tom's Hardware in which they write about an experiment done by a moderator on DIY audio. They provided several uncompressed audio tracks and then recordings of those same tracks as played back through speakers connected to an amplifier via a 6-foot length of professional copper speaker wire. 4 feet of the same speaker wire, since, a 1-inch jumper supposedly makes such a difference. 4 feet of old microphone cable terminated at the ends by soldering it to some pennies. An 8-inch long trough of wet mud and a banana. Not banana plugs, a banana. The banana was 5 inches long for reference.
Yes, key, yes.
Listeners were asked to identify which type of connection was being used in a blind listening comparison. Out of 43 responses, only 6 were correct, which is statistically consistent with entirely random guesses. Interestingly enough, listeners frequently guessed that the straight-up original track was a recording of it having been played through the banana, and that the recording of when it was played through the banana was the straight up original track. So no wonder would we use banana plugs, right?
Yeah. Because everyone anticipated that the straight original track, not a recording of it having been played through speakers whatsoever, just the digital track as played through whatever you happen to be listening to it on. They're like, yeah, I expect that to sound the best. I expect the mud to sound the worst, and I expect the banana to sound second worst. They're like, yeah, no, I think the objectively cleanest track was the one that was played through the banana. So they really know their stuff. Blind listening test, folks. Essentially, that nobody could tell these things apart. But I will say the description of how this experiment was covered out, I mean, it left quite a bit to be desired, because the questionnaire was actually asking people to identify which version was which, not whether they could reliably detect any difference whatsoever. Right. They were actually trying to identify. But you would think that, if it's really so easy to tell the difference between copper speaker wire and aluminum speaker wire, that there is an objectively measurable difference in the resistance, the electrical resistance between professional copper speaker wire and a banana. That is objectively measurable. The banana has higher electrical resistance. It does conduct electricity, obviously, but not as well as pure copper.
It has that little bit of radioactivity, right? The banana, right? The potassium. There's a little bit of radioactivity. See, that helps carry the electrons across.
But I like that quite a bit. But what was your little story, Joe?
So you guys know I like to buy and sell a lot of equipment. And I was shopping for some speakers for my office, not my home office, and found a set of Paradigm Studio Reference 100 towers on, I think it was Facebook Marketplace, for $200. I'm like, $200? Those are, $2,000 speakers. I got to go check this out. And so went over, took a listen to them. Older couple said, oh, we don't listen to these anymore. We don't, but they work fine. I said, can we turn them on? So I listened to them. I'm like, they sound bassy, kind of lacking. I look around back. They have the speaker wire going into the bottom set of terminals and no jumpers at all. So the mid-range and tweeter had not been playing for who knows how many decades on these speakers. I took them to the office. I buy-wired them because I didn't want to pay for some jumpers. Okay. And they sound fantastic. I'm still listening to them today. So the only thing not to use is air. It doesn't transmit so well.
Yeah, should have shoved a banana between those terminals.
That's a pretty good insulator, all right. Or my suggestion of magnesium that is exposed to the air, because magnesium oxide, fantastic insulator. Raw magnesium would conduct just fine. So for those brief moments before it oxidizes, you're doing well.
This sound just gradually fades out. That's great.
Well, shall we get to some questions on this here question and answer podcast?
We shall.
Lee, you're the master of reading these out, so I'll let you read the first question. Lee?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. My brain blanked out. Shut straight off. Too much magnesium and bananas.
That's right.
So the first question from last week is Dan's question. On our suggestion from a couple of weeks ago, Dan tried plugging his Sonos port into his Integra DRX 8.4 receiver. He was really impressed with the sound quality, but he can't say just yet whether it matches the Niles or matches his Sonos amp, or if it sounds different from both of them because it's a different room and different speakers and a different subwoofer. So he'll have to lug the Niles amp and a Sonos amp up to the family room where his Integra lives. But his instinct is that it sounds better than the Sonos amp. More testing needed.
Okay.
Hey, more power to you if you want to lug things around like that.
That's right.
He also asked whether it was worth experimenting with bi-amping using that feature on his Integra. We said no, but he wanted to get out of the snow anyway, so he tried it. Hey, that's fun. Maybe there was an itty-bitty improvement, so small that he isn't sure. So he went back to just using a single amplifier channel to power each of his front speakers, but he kept them wired as a bi-wire setup for now. Not for any audible reason, but he just always hated those flat metal jumpers, those dadgum jumpers that came with his monitor audio speakers. Not sure why. He just likes the bi-wire look better.
That's
more
fine.
Wires.
That's perfectly fine.
I know. It's okay to like how something looks and the vibe you get from it. That's okay. Right. That's why they use different colors and different shapes. Anyways, for his new question. Is there a streaming music player that can deliver Apple Music in its maximum 24-bit, 192 kilohertz quality? He's got a Sonos and an Apple 4K TV. Those can both do Apple Music natively, but they both top out at 2448 instead of 24192. He's got HEOS and Blue Sound, but neither of those supports Apple Music natively. Reading up on it, it seems like only phones, tablets, and Mac computers can output the full 24.192 signal. And they need an external DAC to do it. Did he simply overlook a streaming box option?
So unless Lee or Joe knows of something I don't know, you did not overlook an option. As far as I'm aware, you do need to use either a computer or a phone or a tablet to output the full 24-bit 192 kilohertz signal that Apple Music is capable of supplying on certain tracks, we must say. It's certainly not the entire catalog. And yes, you do need an external DAC, which, oh boy, does this start to make me, like, I would not recommend worrying about 192 kilohertz sampling to begin with.
No.
But beyond that, you're necessitating a DAC in between this source device and then you're plugging it into your Integra, I'm assuming, or maybe into one of your other systems. So you're plugging an analog signal into that. If it is the Integra receiver, it is digitizing that signal. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The Integra digitizes every signal that comes into it. Now, if you are then allowing it to perform any sort of bass management, or certainly if you're doing any kind of upmixing, if you're keeping DRAC turned on, then it is limited to 48 kilohertz anyway. It does not sample any higher than 48 kilohertz when you use any of the digital processing that's built into your Integra. So, I mean, all of this is like, is this at all worth it to worry about? I'm going to say it's not worth it to worry about higher than 48 kilohertz sampling under any conditions.
Exactly.
We can't hear frequencies that high. And all it does when you increase the sampling frequency is increase the Nyquist frequency, which is double whatever the highest audible frequency you're trying to capture. That's what the Nyquist frequency is. So, you know, more than 40 kilohertz is not really necessary. We built in with CD quality 44.1 kilohertz, a little bit of extra room above 20 kilohertz and then 40 kilohertz as the Nyquist frequency. We built that in because there is a filter being applied up there. There's a low pass filter being applied at the very, very top end. So it's a very, very steep filter. And 48 kilohertz allows your typical microphone that can capture up to 22 or 24 kilohertz to do so and then still have that filter above it. But worrying about any higher is honestly not worth it. But anyway, answering the question as wrote, honestly, the easiest thing that you could do here would be to, use your iPhone and get the, not actually get an external DAC. What you could get is the USB-C to HDMI adapter for your iPhone, and then plug that straight into your AV receiver or other processor. That'll still allow you, it'll let you use the DACs that are built into your AV receiver or your other processor. The ones in the Integra can accept a signal up to 24.192, so that's okay. You can do that, 2-channel PCM, 24.192. You can do that via HDMI, so that would be the most direct signal path. Plug your phone in via USB to HDMI adapter straight in. But then it's going to get knocked down to 48 kilohertz inside your AV receiver anyway, so there it is. But yes, there's no like standalone box like an Apple TV 4K or something similar that does it natively. Yeah.
You're chasing the purple unicorn right there. It's just not gonna change your life if you do get it something that works. Move on. Let's go to Dale.
Well, I don't know, Joe, did you want to weigh in on that first one?
So I can't think of anything for Apple Music that would do this. There was a box that was promoted by, I can't remember the name, it was an older musician that was in, this was a Kickstarter type of a piece. And it was like this triangular...
The Pono. Pono player.
But was that for Roon? Or I don't even remember what it streamed, but I remember it being
was
high
not Apple
rate.
Music.
No, not at all. But I can't think of anything else besides that.
Yeah. Nope, there you go.
Okay.
Are we
Question
going on
two?
to Dale? Me?
Yeah,
Me?
who wants to read out Dale?
Me.
Okay.
First up, Dale is trying to help out his friend, Rick, to upgrade his audio system, asking for a friend.
Yeah.
Rick is currently using a bunch of gear from the 1900s. Well, not quite. Kenwood receiver from 1989, Kenwood turntable from 1975, Sony CD 5-disc changer from 1990, and a pair of Bose 201 speakers. All good stuff. He's working with a budget of $3,000 max, and it's a fairly large room, about 25 feet by 30 feet. He's open to replacing the speakers and turntable, but would also be okay with keeping both of those items. He definitely wants to replace the Kenwood receiver, good, though, and he would like to add a subwoofer, also good. We should note Rick is into the whole stereo audio way of thinking from the audio magazine days, so he is convinced that he wants the warm tube amp sound of distortion. He is okay with either separates or an integrated amp or receiver. He's not picky about that side of things. Question A. So let's start there. Which receiver, integrated amp, or separates would we recommend for powering this updated setup? And just so this is a stereo 2-channel only kind of application, sounds like.
And he does want to expand it to 2.1. He wants that subwoofer connection. Right. But that's as far as we're going. There's no multi-channel going on here. So my first thought, I'm not sure how much he's going to be like, I dig the idea of being right up to date. Because, look, I'm playing it straight. This is my genuine recommendation. I think this is the right product to go for in this scenario, is a WIM Amp Ultra. Which costs $530, but with the budget that he's working with, that should be affordable. One of the things that's really good here, first of all, has a substantial amount of built-in power and very, very linear amplifiers. So it tells it like it is. I'm not going to say that this is a warm-sounding amplifier, but what it does have, if you're keen to achieve a certain sound, is some pretty decent equalization. You have quite a bit of equalization options that are built into the WIM Amp Ultra, meaning you can, if you're willing to put a little bit of time into it, make this sound just about like any pre-pro or amplifier that you could possibly want it to sound like. It'll take a little bit of tweaking on your part to get it there. But ample power on board, a nice set of inputs on the back. It's going to handle all of the sources that you want to. And then it's giving you access to all of the streaming music services that it's could open up a whole new world for Rick. So truly, genuinely, I think this is the best option. But maybe he's not going to want something like that. Maybe looks, wise, it's not going to be what he was hoping for. So I think a pretty decent option to go here. Now, it's about half the amplifier power of the WIM Amp Ultra, but that's, 3 decibels of headroom, as long as you connect it to some pretty sensitive speakers. There is, I was just showing the back image there of the WIM Amp Ultra before we moved on. So very, clean connections there, but it does have a dedicated subwoofer output. The CD player can be connected by optical, and then it is just RCA inputs. So for the stereo, so you would want a phono preamp or a turntable that has the phono preamp built into it. It doesn't have a dedicated phono input, but HDMI connection as well. So this can be your TV system, your HDMI ARC connection on the back of that. But with a very similar set of inputs on the back, but maybe looks that would be more appealing. I don't know. Tone Winner's AD60. All the prices on Tone Winner stuff has gone up because of the tariffs, but $600 is what they're charging. So still not breaking the bank, $70 more than the WIM Amp Ultra. Now, like I say, this is about half of the amplifier power, but we are moving to Class AB amplification rather than Class D. If there's any uncomfortability with that, on the back of this one, you got a very similar collection of inputs. You got stereo RCA in, you got a optical or coax that you can connect the CD player to, HDMI ARC, and then a subwoofer pre-out. So that could be a good solution there. And you do have a Bluetooth antenna that's connected here, so you can do your Bluetooth sources that way. Now, he said tube amps, and I actually have an option if it's it must be tubes, because most of the tube amp stuff that you look up is going to be multi-thousands of dollars, and you've already blown the budget. But Monoprice has a not very powerful, but a has tubes on it, $100 hybrid tube preamp, because the tubes are actually on the preamp section of this. And you know what? That makes more sense, because if you want to add the distortion that tubes add to the signal, do it at the preamp stage and then amplify it with something more powerful. In this case, 25 watts per channel of Class AB amplification, but you can still get that tube sound because it's applied to the much weaker preamp signal. It's only $100. You could basically take a flyer on it. It has a completely decent set of outputs on the back. No, those sub outs are not actually a crossover filter in there. That is just a low pass filter on the sub outs only, and then a full range signal is still going to the left and right signals, which that might be what he wants anyway. But there still is a thing you can plug your subwoofer into. It is already low pass filtered for that. And then you got optical, you got RCA in, and you got your 25 watts per channel going to the speakers there. So for $100, that could be an option if just the look of tubes is a must. Did Lee or Joe have a suggestion other than what I came up with there?
No, I like that WIM amp, just the tweaking that someone can do.
Yep.
That might be just the ticket for somebody that's into 2-channel and wants to wants to fuss with it a little bit. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but wants to really take their time and tweak, that could really be something he would enjoy. Just when you're convincing him to get it, just use audiophile terms, use stereo audio magazine terms like black background and expanded soundstage.
Not a bad idea.
Go read some old copies. Go read some old copies and learn to talk like that and just talk to him the right way, and that's what he'll get.
I'll throw out one other suggestion to take a look at, and I know you can find these on the used market, but Peachtree Audio used to make some pieces that were same kind of situation where you would have a tube preamp section and then 60 watt by 2, I think Class AB amplifier section, but they were a lot of their pieces were originally designed to work with older iPods. And so you can find a lot of those out there that might be worth looking at for fun.
Good thought. I like it.
Okay, right. Since he knows he wants to add a subwoofer, which model do we recommend?
So, we got to be aware of the room size here, right? We don't want to go recommending, we can't go nuts with the budget, right? $3,000 total. Right. But we want a pretty darn capable, in terms of output, subwoofer to go in here. I'm perfectly fine with suggesting just one in this setup. It's essentially one listener, and it's a big room. So chances
25 by 30.
Yeah, 25 by 30. So chances are he's going to be able to find a spot that's reasonable, even for a physically fairly large subwoofer. So to me, the first one that jumps to mind is RSL's Speedwoofer 12S, their larger model, $885, and that includes the shipping charge. So I don't think you can do a whole lot better. Now, that's still not going to get you to cinema reference volume in a 25 by 30 foot room, but just in terms of bang for a buck, that's certainly one that comes to mind. Also, it's very easy to make this wireless with RSL's wireless subwoofer system. So given the size of the room, I don't know how easy it's going to be to run a subwoofer cable from wherever the new integrated amp ends up living. So being able to easily do it via a wireless signal might be very beneficial. Then the other one that's just going to be bang for a buck is going to be something from HSU, from Shoe Research. I'm mostly thinking like the VTF3 Mark V HP, because that's the clear headroom output upgrade over that RSL, right? You're going up to a 15-inch driver with the VTF3 Mark V HP, and for $1,050 plus another $100 in shipping, right? So we're looking at $200 more than the RSL, but you are getting genuinely more output. The TN1, at $1,250 plus another $100 shipping on that could be a good option if he's wanting to go with something that's taller with a smaller footprint. I think that can make sense. But yeah, these days it's pretty hard to beat the bang for a buck value of either RSL or HSU, and I think that's the way I would point him. Thoughts from the two of you?
Well, if he's a two-channel guy, he needs two subwoofers. He needs stereo bass up at the front of the room because it looks cool in magazines, right? So I would, all joking aside, I would look at some of the SVS stuff. They've got some great sales going on. Sure. If you look at their, their scratch and dents clearance, whatever outlet.
That's true.
There might be some good opportunities, and they'll give you a discount if you go dual there. So maybe a pair of the 2000 Pros or something like that.
Yeah. You would want to get them at a discount though, because otherwise you're blowing that budget pretty darn quick. That was the main reason I didn't jump to them first. It's just price, just purely price. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Continuing on, if he does get new speakers, any suggestions there?
I had one that I'm like I'm not going to say for some reason, for legitimate reasons, price being chief among them, yes. But I'm envisioning maybe sort of the looks that he wants. He described wanting that sort of warmer, tube-like sound. I'm picturing that this is someone who would appreciate imaging that is easy to achieve, like good stereo imaging that doesn't require a lot of room treatments or ultra careful placement, because this is a large room we're dealing with again. So one that came to mind, actually mentioned this series before, but Polk Audio's Signature Elite series. If you look at their ES60 towers, the largest towers in that series, $600 each. So, getting a pair of those for $1,200, we're going to be able to fit within this budget if we do stick with the single subwoofer, that is. But it's just, I really quite like just the overall sound quality of the Signature Elite series from Polk. I find it a very pleasing sound, and ever since Polk, got bought up, they've gotten more and more neutral as they go along. They have less and less of a characteristic sound, and the Signature Elites measure relatively neutral. but multiple different finish options. I think he really might like the walnut finish. You know, it's got a nice look to those speakers. And then the tweeter that they use in this series, it by design has a little bit of a high frequency roll off. And that really helps with creating a wide but still distinct good center image without having to be terribly fussy about placement. So all in all, I think it's a great combination. It's the one that jumped to mind for me. If I were just going to be like, is there one I would suggest to this particular buyer? I'm like, I think the Polk Signature Elite might suit their fancy. Yeah.
The good thing about Polk, it's got the old school vibe to it, to me. Because Polk's been around a minute. I was thinking,
could be a name he recognizes too, right?
Yeah, it's a recognizable name. I love the looks of those speakers you're recommending. I don't like it. I like it a lot. I like the colors and the shape and everything. So, yeah, that's a good one.
Okay.
So I'll throw out there. He had the Bose 201s, which, if I remember correctly, was like a 7 or 8 inch woofer, and then a mid range in a little pod that fired forwards and backwards. Is that right?
Gosh, I can't remember if there was a dedicated mid-range. They are the sort of almost horizontal-looking speakers where the tweeter is around the curved side of it and firing not on axis at all.
Yeah, they're goofy design. But I would say with that size speaker, again, if you're looking on the SBS Outlet Center, you may be able to find some of their bookshelf speakers, which might be a good match for the subwoofers.
Okay.
Sorry, I got distracted looking at Bose 201s to see what they looked like.
Still carrying on with Dale.
So Dale says, and if he were to replace his turntable, which would we recommend? Rick was a fan of the old Technics SL1200, and he'd be interested in a phono preamp recommendation as well.
I mean, there's one answer here, and actually it would be a great companion with the Winamp Ultra, because there's the Audio-Technica AT LP120. That is the one to get. It's $450 retail. You can definitely find them for $400, and it has a switch on the back, so you can change it between using its built-in phono preamp, which now you can just connect those RCA connections directly to the Winamp Ultra with nothing in between, and that is how I would do it. But you can flick the switch and connect it to an external preamp if you want to. Lee, I know you would have suggested the ATLP 120.
Yeah.
Right? So,
I mean, I don't know. In this case, is it going to sound any different or better than a Kenwood from 1975, where you could be playing with different styluses and cartridges?
Which you can still do with the Audio-Technica, and it's got every adjustment known to man. So
that's true.
Whatever you want to do with that LP120, you can do. But yeah, speaking of, if you did want to use the external phono preamp, I mean, I'm going to point you to JDS Labs. I'm going to point you to their Atom Phono for $150 because it doesn't break the bank, and oh my goodness, is it basically as flawless as a phono preamp can be, regardless of price. So, again, with the budget we're working with, I think it makes sense. But then performance-wise, I'm like, there is no reason to buy a different phono preamp. This is as technically good as a phono preamp gets for $150, so why spend more? Yeah.
But yeah, that Audio-Technica. I mean, if you want a new one,
right.
if it's time to get a new one, can't go wrong.
Let's wrap it up with Dale.
The last turntable I had, I think, was made by Fisher Price, so I'm not going to comment. Now to Dale's own place. Dale has his home theater set up in a small spare bedroom. It's roughly 10 feet wide by 11 feet long. At present, all of the room surfaces are hard and reflective. The only treatment, as such, is a thick rug that he's placed between the TV and the couch on the floor. So what would be our recommendation for how to acoustically treat his room? Could we say the size of the panels and what types of panels, bass traps, diffusion, combo, etc., in a ranked order from most important to least important? So you want to start there? He does have one request. He would like to have panels on either side walls with images of movie posters on them. Are there any new places we can suggest that won't have a problem putting movie poster images onto panels?
You know what? Maybe I'll do that part first because I would point you to Acoustimac if you want to buy panels that are made for you and have the images printed on them. They're the most reasonable price for sure, and this is a situation where, it's the spare bedroom. You're probably not dealing with oodles of sunlight streaming in, and it's a dedicated theater, so I don't think there's a reason to pay more for a Gix sublimated dye process. I think the printing is the way to go here. If you want to buy the fabric on your own and wrap your own panels, I'm still going to point you to Spoonflower. But in both of them, they will reject your images if it is a recognizably copyrighted image, like a full-on movie poster that you really should purchase the rights to reproduce. The thing is, though, if you do the trick that we've talked about before of you use a little bit of photo editing software, or you look up images that have already been manipulated, where the text on the poster has been removed. So you can still have the recognizable image, but you just have the text and the name of the movie itself, all of that text removed. Then they seem to be okay with printing that, even though that should still be a recognizable copyrighted image, as long as it is not literally a poster that you can buy.
Ask an AI to put your face on the poster. And then it works.
Yep, something like that. So, I'm still going to point you to Acoustimac and Spoonflower for the printing of the fabric. The general thing to do in room treatment. So, first of all, everything you need to do with acoustical treatment can be done with absorption. So I am not someone who's going to recommend messing around with diffusion panels. You really don't need diffusion panels in this room. And then even combo panels is not what you're worried about here. You're worried about strong early reflections, and you're worried about, not so much room reverberation or resonance, because that's going to be happening at reasonably high frequencies in a room with such small dimensions. But you are still worried about that crossover region between your speakers and subwoofers. So key number one, as it is with literally any room, you cannot have too much bass trapping. You could fill the entire room with insulation, and bass trapping wise, it would not be too much. It would be a problem in many other ways, but bass trapping wise, that would not be too much. So number one is wherever you can fit some 8-inch thick insulation, which I know is asking a lot, but and that's 8-inch thick in total. So that really could be 6 inches of insulation with a 2-inch air gap, which would be absolutely equal in performance to just 8 inches of insulation with no air gap. And even 4 inches of insulation with a 4-inch air gap is going to have a little bit of unevenness in some of its absorption, but it's still going to perform pretty well for the purposes of bass trapping. But we're talking about, the front surface of this panel is 8 inches away from the back surface of this panel, which is asking quite a bit.
Yes.
Yeah. Joe, you had something to say there?
Yeah. So answering the question as asked, I would go absorption, bass traps, combo, and diffusion, maybe in that order. I agree with you that the absorption is going to do the most, especially if this room is entirely hard surfaces, which it sounds like the floor is also. So it's...
And I want, we don't have oodles and oodles of space and surface.
Right.
So I want broadband. Let's kill as many birds with one stone as we possibly can.
So for the
bass traps are that.
Yeah, so for the poster look, I would not necessarily go as thick as 8 inches.
No.
Acoustically, it makes sense to, but I agree in this room, if you give up 1.5 feet, this room is only 10 feet wide. It gets narrower and narrower.
True.
So I would look at maybe, a 2-inch type of a gig type of on wall for your side walls. I think if you have a back wall, if you have room for something deeper there, you could do it. And then also corner trapping may work out well in this room, depending on where doors and everything else is.
I want to do bass trapping first. So like I say, we're aiming for 8 inches thick if we do it. If you can't, 6 inches is okay. 4 inches is getting to not really being a bass trap anymore, unless you straddle across a corner. You could take a 4-inch thick of insulation and straddle it across a corner, and it doesn't have to be the vertical corners. Could be the wall-to-ceiling corners. Could be the floor-to-wall corners. That's perfectly fine. But if you straddle 4 inches of insulation across those corners, you've effectively built in, enough of an air gap behind it by straddling the corner that you're getting the same effect, similar effect to 8 inches thick. So yes, bass trapping number one. I'm hesitant to say to put any panels at your first reflection points. We're actually got a question coming up exactly about that. But if you're putting thin panels at your first reflection points, all you're doing is weakening the high frequencies only, which is now altering the reflection from the first reflection versus the direct sound, which is causing more problems than it's fixing, right? I'm actually fine. We're going to get to this again when we talk about it more in depth. I'm actually fine with treating your first reflection points, but if you do so, it has to be thick broadband absorption that uniformly weakens that reflection across all frequencies. What I don't want at my first reflection point treatment is uneven weakening of those reflections. It needs to be even weakening of those reflections, which either means nothing or very thick and broadband, one or the other at the first reflection points.
I'll throw out two other ideas. One, you could do curtains. If you can do really heavy double curtains that are very, very pleated, that can work well for broadband absorption. I do like the idea of maybe doing some of the ceiling clouds, because that doesn't eat up then horizontal width or depth space. It just pulls down your ceiling a little bit, but that might be really good for added bass trapping.
But like in a way, like if budget is a real concern, I would start with the bass trapping. Maybe like just like literally start with that and see how it goes, because we just want the overall room decay times and particularly that crossover region to come down overall broadband, and then control that crossover region a little bit more importantly. The next place, like you said, prioritize, right? The next place I would treat is actually the front wall behind your speakers. And in a situation like this, I would just try to put 4-inch thick insulation on as much of that front wall as I possibly can. Like that's kind of the aim there. The next place I would treat after that, and this might actually leap ahead of the front wall in my priority list, if your seat is really close to the back wall, I want to treat directly behind my head. I probably want to treat directly behind my head no matter what, but particularly if I'm really close to that back wall, it makes a big, big difference. Sometimes more than treating the front wall, but it's like, if your seat is well away from the back wall, then I would treat the front wall first, kind of as much as I can, kind of as thick as I can. Then I would treat the back wall behind my head. The side walls in this situation, I'm less concerned about. I kind of like the idea of either leave them bare, like I'm talking the first reflection point specifically. I kind of either leave them bare, or if you want something there, put some, actually in this case, kind of thin curtains that really aren't going to do much acoustically, but it gives you something there to soften things up just a little bit. If you still want those movie posters on the side walls, I'd have them a little further back. I'd have them towards the back of the room, and you have your images there. Also, I like that they're not a visual distraction when you're looking forward, if the printed posters are towards the back of the room on the side walls. So in the sake of time for this podcast, we'll last comments and then we'll move on.
I was just going to say, we don't know what his front speakers are, so I don't know how they're going to perform with the reflection. But then also that behind you, make sure I would only use absorption there. Don't screw up your dialogue by trying to use diffusion or something else. It's really just an absorption location.
I'm saying absorption only in this room, but
And
bass traps first, probably front wall second, back wall, and then not too worried about the sides.
Like everything helps, bring in a stack of blankets. Throw anything absorptive around the room. Anything helps. Shall we move on to Alan?
Mm-hmm.
Am I still reading?
Yes, you are.
All right. Alan, in his quest to find some new closed-back headphones to use in his cubicle at work, he went ahead and bought the JDS Labs Atom 2 headphone preamp and amp bundle that Rob suggested. They are wonderful. Absolutely no noise floor at all. That sounds good. That's called a black background that I mentioned earlier. And they can get loud, so he's keeping those. He also bought the Sennheiser HD 620s that Rob suggested. He was hoping they'd sound similar to his older pair of open-back Sennheiser HD 600. And he was also hoping he'd like them more than his Sennheiser Momentum. But they're a little lacking in bass output, he feels. He says he's splitting hairs, but he was just a little disappointed in their sound. So he's back to gather more suggestions. Should he try the Bayer Dynamic DT770 Pro that have garnered a lot of good reviews, or any other closed back models to try? I'm the wrong one to ask because I'm always about these like studio Sony headphones, That's my closed back audio of choice.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I like those Sennheiser HD 620 is that they don't have overblown bass, which is really common with a lot of closed-back headphones. Mm-hmm. They sound a little more similar to Sennheiser's open-back headphones, in my opinion, and then the open-back headphones definitely don't have as much bass as a lot of closed-back headphones. So in that way, I find them more similar, but he's like, you wanted that little bit of extra bass kick. One I know that Tom would have pointed him to are Audio-Technica's ATH M50X. Those are going for $160 for a pair of those. Nice, comfortable headphones. A slight character to their sound. I wouldn't call them perfectly neutral, but certainly a very pleasing, very easy to listen to for a long time sound with those ATH M50Xs. And then they also have the M70X. Those are substantially more expensive. They're up to $330 for the pair of those. But those are closer to a studio, like, really, really linear, tell it like it is headphone. So I'm not even sure that that's what he's looking for, given the description that he said there. But if you are looking for Audio-Technica to deliver that, the M70Xs are closer to that. Then I just wanted to reiterate, because Saucy weighed in on this a couple of weeks ago. He was recommending the Dan Clark Aeon RT. $500 a pair for the closed-back version of those, but these are planar magnetic headphones in a closed-back version, which is a little bit rare for planar magnetic headphones. But Saucy was a big fan of those, and I don't mind reiterating that one. So I think out of those, should he try the Beyerdynamics? By all means, you should try the Beyerdynamics. They aren't my personal favorite headphones. I actually find them a bit too big. They're like they look like what people use down on the football field. Like they are some honking cans, those Beyerdynamics. So they're not personally my favorite.
It makes me think of a 1970s library.
Yep. So any others from you, gents?
Try a Sony Studio headphone. That's just what I love, man. Fair. Pry them from my cold dead hand. That's very accurate. And in the case of these are kind of DJ headphones, they don't make this model anymore, so I can't really recommend that. But they're big drivers. I think they're 50 millimeter drivers in there, and they sound wonderful.
All right, Joe. Next up,
Scott had actually been very satisfied with his theater for a while, so he admits he hasn't been listening to every episode of AVRant, for shame.
What?
But now he's feeling like he's finally ready. Plus, he has saved up enough money to upgrade his JVC DLA X30 projector. He recalls we used to recommend the JVC NP5, and that we actually preferred that it still uses a lamp over lasers. Those can still be found and within his budget, so should he get one of those or something else?
I mean, Joe, you're the perfect person to answer this, so I've got to say.
I had personally the JVC NX5, which was a predecessor, and that was a great projector. I think the big advantage of having the lamp over lasers is that you get 2,000 hours on that lamp, pull it out, put a new one in, you're back to a brand new projector, more or less. There are other JVC choices out there, but I think coming from the DLA X30 up to something like the MP5, would be a great choice. I think that's a projector you can be very happy with.
Like, I was trying to think of, is there any other brand? I'm like, no. If you're coming from the X30, you're not going to be satisfied with anything other than another JVC.
Right, you're going to be used to those really dark blacks that JVC is known for, so I think it's a good pick.
And if he's looking at the MP5 and saying, okay, that's the model that is like fitting my budget most comfortably, which makes sense because it's the least expensive, then looking at the alternative Sonys that would be even close to that price range, I'm like, nope, the MP5 is just flat out better than those ones. So that's the easy choice there. So, I mean, we'd be looking at the NZ500 right now. But like, it actually has some feature
deletions,
downgrades versus the MP5. Like the NZ500 does not do 4K 120. I don't know if that's important to you, but the MP5 does 4K 120, and then the NZ500 doesn't. So you're getting the laser in the NZ500, but you're actually coming down to being limited to 4K 60. The NP5 still does 3D. The NZ500 does not do 3D. I don't know if you want 3D, but the MP5 can do it. And then the NZ500 does cost more. So it's really about you're actually taking some downgrades in order to go to the laser light engine and then paying more to do it. If you can still find an MP5, I can't see you being super disappointed with the performance of that model.
And if you look around, a lot of times you'll see either refurbished units being sold by authorized sellers. So I think AV Science every once in a while will promote the fact that they have those, and they'll come with a full warranty or a 1-year warranty, but they also a lot of times will come with a spare bulb, so that can get you quite a ways.
Yeah. I think it's a darn good choice. Like, look, if you don't get that, then it's going to be an NZ500, right? It's going to be between those two. So I think you can look at the feature set, and that'll be enough to decide. We've whittled it down to 2, which is a pretty reasonable 50-50 choice. Second part of Scott's question.
So he's going to need to replace his 40-foot HDMI cable. Yes, it is in a conduit that he installed inside his walls. Fantastic. So what's the recommendation there? Can we say it all together? Ruby Pro.
Yeah, Ruby Pro. My goodness. This is the easiest recommendation there ever was. They have these fantastic detachable HDMI 2.1 ultra high speed certified HDMI cables that use standard data center fiber optic cable, and you can replace those HDMI ends on them if you ever need to, including they're fully going to support the HDMI 2.2 ridiculous 96 gigabit per second bandwidth once that becomes available, and you don't have to replace the data center cable. But I mean, even more than that, you already have a conduit, which is fantastic, but then like pulling a data center cable with its small connectors through an existing conduit is so easy. So on top of that, the 40-foot length is $100. Like, that's not crazy breaking the bank. That's, for a one-time purchase. So that is the easiest recommendation ever. Get yourself to RuiPro and get their detachable fiber optic 40-foot length HDMI cable.
Shall we move on to Miguel?
Let's shall.
When I took Spanish in the 10th grade, my first name was Michael, and so I went by Miguel.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was Jose.
I remember nothing.
¿Dónde está la biblioteca?
Yeah. ¿Qué hora es? Miguel, thanks to some recent YouTube videos and chatter online, the whole topic of whether or not to acoustically treat your first reflection points on your side walls is currently a popular discussion. We were touching on that a moment ago. It seems the most common advice is that if you have quote-unquote good speakers with flat on-axis response and very similar off-axis response with just a gentle roll-off to the sides, that it's actually best to not put any acoustic treatments on the side walls at the first reflection points. In graphs, they point to the sound power distribution. So can we explain all of that to him so that it makes sense?
Yeah, Joe, I'd like you to lead us off here.
Sure thing. So I did provide a link to a really good article that's over on Audioholics, and that kind of describes exactly how those... Stop, doggy. Sorry. The way the graphs are set up. And if you go from top to bottom, it makes a lot of sense. Can you go lay down?
No, pick the doggy up. Make the doggy part of the
She weighs
podcast.
75 pounds.
Get her.
Okay, so if you go from top to bottom on what these frequency response graphs look like, first is on axis, so they're measuring straight on the speaker. Yeah. That's almost always the top line, and it's going to go from low frequency to high frequency. The next is going to be your, what they call their listening window, which is a combination of on axis and then 10, 20, and 30 degree measurements horizontally and 10 degree vertical above and below. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives you, the whole window that they expect your listening audience to be inside.
And I'll sometimes talk about that as being like the cone in which you're likely to sit, and the sort of cone that I use to when I'm towing in my speakers or adjusting the height or the tilt of the speakers. I'm like, let's try and get all of the listeners that I care about within that cone. Yeah. Okay. So listening window.
The next line down are going to be all of your early reflections. And those are an estimate of all the first reflections that you're going to hear. It's going to be kind of 90 degrees off in all directions, right? Measured in 10 degree increments. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of all of the different ones that you're going to see. The fourth one down is sound power. Mm-hmm. And what sound power is, if you are familiar with the Harman's Spinorama model, and I think the Clipple works in a similar way, is that you either take the speaker and you leave the microphone and you turn it 360 degrees around and then 360 degrees around, top to bottom, side to side. So you're taking measurements in 10 degree increments all the way around this thing to see where sound is going anywhere off of the speaker. And you have to be, in either an anechoic chamber or so many feet off the ground, so you're minimizing reflections, or you're using a Clipple, which is canceling reflections. So that sound power is really all audio coming off of this thing, right? Right. And typically that's going to dive off pretty fast in the high frequencies because for the lower frequencies, the deeper bass is wrapping around that thing, and that's the omnidirectional nature of it. The very last measurement that you'll see, the one usually almost at the bottom of the graph, is the sound power directivity index. And what that is kind of a comparison of how does it sound direct on versus off axis. The easiest way to read this is if you look at the bottom of the graph, whichever frequencies are the highest up are the most directional, right? So that way, if you know up above 10 kilohertz or whatever it is you're looking at, it's going to be much more of a audio frequency that you're going to hear only maybe directly in front of the speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we're looking at this information is to the majority of the sound that you're hearing when you put a speaker in the room are reflections,
sure,
right? So if you can look at how the speaker sounds at all of these different angles or measurements, it's going to tell you how much is that first reflection going to impact things. You know, if you're using that mirror trick on the ceiling or on your sidewalls, well, if this speaker sounds almost identical directly aiming at you in the listening window or with the sound power, wherever it is that you're measuring, the less you need to treat that speaker. So that's a truer representation of the original signal.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is stemming from Dr. Floyd Toole's research, and there was always a little question in my mind, because when they were talking about, like, you know, what is the best speaker, how does the best speaker measure, they still always came back to the listening tests and saying, well, this is the speaker that the majority of people preferred, right? And there's this little bit of incongruity between, well, just because the majority of people preferred that speaker, does that mean it was actually the most tell it like it is speaker? Now,
No.
what makes always logical sense is that you take a speaker into an anechoic chamber, you play a test signal through it, and what went in is what came out. And I think it's pretty difficult to argue that a speaker that performs that way in an anechoic chamber is doing anything other than accurately representing the signal that you're putting into it. That just makes logical sense. And then thankfully, speakers that measure that way in an anechoic chamber are the ones that in Harmon's research and Dr. Floyd Toole's research were preferred by the majority of people, in the sense that most people who were listening to studio recordings of musical instruments, they're like, that's the speaker that sounds like the real instrument is here playing for me. And again, that makes sense, because if the speaker is just reproducing the signal and you're listening to a studio recording of an instrument, it's going to sound like you brought that real life instrument into your room. The slight little issue is that when we're talking about home theater, we're very often talking about purely digitally created sounds, and those are going to work great in that same scenario. But sometimes, and this goes for live concert recordings as well, in the recording itself is a sense of atmosphere and space. And so if we're recreating that out of the speaker, but then we still have strong reflections from the boundaries of our room, we're getting these audio cues twice. We're getting it once from the direct sound where the recording contains a sense of ambience and physical space, and then we're also getting the reflections from our own room. So to me, there is a scenario where home theater or live concert recordings is a slightly different goal versus studio recordings or recordings that lack ambient information in the recording itself. But all of that is a little bit beside the point, because if we're looking at, okay, even if this speaker performs quote unquote poorly by Dr. Floyd Toole standards or Harman standards in terms of off-axis response versus on-axis response, like, what is happening in that scenario? It means the direct sound is noticeably, measurably different from the reflected sound. What do we want to do about that? Right? So one answer would be, well, we maybe want to reduce those reflections. We have fewer of those audio cues that are telling our brain, hey, something's a little bit weird and hinky here and it doesn't sound quite right. But how do we want to reduce that sound? Do we want to reduce only some of the frequencies, or would we want to reduce all of the frequencies? And I would argue, well, we want to reduce all of the frequencies. More of the bass, because the bass is radiating more in an omnidirectional pattern. The treble is already going to be weaker. But it doesn't make sense to me to put thin panels on the first reflection point sidewalls and only reduce the high frequencies when they're already the part that's weaker, and then we've made the frequency response even more uneven versus the direct response. We've made the situation worse. And that's what Dr. Floyd Toole always said. He's like, you can treat the first reflection points, but if you're doing it with 2-inch thick panels, if you're doing it with foam panels, if you're doing it with those egg grate panels that we saw in all the studios, you're making it worse. You're making it more uneven, and you're treating the least important frequencies, which are the high frequencies. So then there are the people who say, okay, so we want to reduce maybe somewhat uniformly, but we want to reduce the high frequencies maybe a little bit less than the bass frequencies. Let's put diffusion panels there instead of absorption panels. And I'm like, well, again, you're really only reducing the treble a little bit less than a 2-inch thick absorption panel would, but you're still reducing the treble you're not like, yes, it is scattering it, but scattering is the mechanism by which we reduce the strength. That's what's happening. It got quieter. And unless your diffusion panel is about 27 feet deep, you are not impacting lower frequencies at all. And it would have to be a very carefully designed diffusion panel. So then we say, okay, really the only panel that truly makes sense at the first reflection points for a bad speaker, bad off-axis response, is a combo panel. But again, not a combo panel where you have a 1-inch thick little piece of slatted wood in front of a 4-inch thick insulation absorber. Like that 1-inch thick piece of slatted wood is not doing anything. You would need a 8 to 12-inch thick diffusion panel on top of a 8-inch thick absorption panel. Who has sidewalls that can accommodate that, right? So we come back to well, what do we really want to do here? We either want to not treat the first reflection points, which then necessitates that we have a good speaker that is very similar on versus off axis, or we want to treat the first reflection points very uniformly, which we can do with, like I mentioned in a previous question, about 8 inches of insulation that is fully broadband absorption. No messing around with diffusion, because the diffusion would have to be very thick on its own on top of that absorption. So I'm like, we end up with a scenario of it's one or the other. Either we weaken everything uniformly, or we don't weaken it at all. And then I would argue if you have a bad speaker, you want to weaken everything uniformly. And so even someone like, Aaron Hardison on Aaron's Audio Corner, he's like, yeah, there are scenarios where it makes sense to treat your first reflection points, but don't do it with a 2-inch thick panel. You're just going to make it even worse than it already was. So that's where we land on all of that.
And I would argue if you have a bad speaker, don't treat it. Go get a good speaker instead.
There you go.
That would be the best answer, wouldn't it? By the way, I'm about to hang a cool Japanese folding painting, like a 4-panel thing. It's got lovely nature and trees and birds and stuff, and it matches the colors of our room. It's about 1 inch thick and kind of flexible canvas. I'm going to hang that on the left side of the room as you face the TV. It's going to be at a first reflection point. Should I bother with anything at all? I really don't feel like going through another measurement of anything. Is that going to change enough compared to drywall? There's literally nothing there now. It's just drywall.
Right.
And it's going to change to, what am I thinking? Maybe a few feet high and 4 feet wide, sort of canvas. Painted.
I mean, that's just a reflective surface as
no
far as most audio is concerned.
It's so insignificantly different than the drywall that I shouldn't do anything.
I mean, you've slightly changed for some of the directional frequencies the time, but they're still just going to reflect, and it's still going to be within that range where your brain is just going to mush it all together into one singular sound anyway. So
I didn't think I should possibly worry about that.
No.
Good.
It's like hanging a poster. Hanging a poster at your first reflection points that isn't an acoustic treatment, totally fine. It's basically a wall.
It is. It's hardly any different from drywall. If it had a glass in front of the poster, that would be a little brighter, a little more reflective than drywall. Not worth worrying about. No. Right. So,
let me continue on with his question.
Yes, yeah.
If a good speaker is actually better off without any sidewall first reflection treatments, then why does towing in your speaker still make a difference in the sound?
So, did you want to take that one, Joe? Because
it's basically you're increasing the amount of on-axis sound that you're going to be hearing, right? So if you can point that tweeter, compression driver, waveguide, whatever it is, right at your ears, you're going to hear more of that on-axis sound.
Yeah, because you'll notice in any of those spinorama measurements that, as soon as you go off of the direct on-axis measurement, the highest frequencies start to roll off a little bit. That's just going to happen across the board. So when it comes to stereo imaging, which is largely what we're playing with when we're experimenting with the toe-in of our speakers, what's really at play there is the difference between what only your left ear receives versus what only your right ear receives. And so the more you have that completely directional on-axis sound from the left speaker aiming at your left ear, let alone your head, like very specifically your left ear, and then the fully on-axis sound from the right speaker aiming at your right ear, you get maximum differential that you can achieve in a basic sound setup from doing that type of toe-in. But then as you toe them out, or as you cross them even steeper, you're getting a higher percentage of reflected sound that's can sometimes help with the sense that the soundstage is wider, because you're getting a greater difference in time between the arrival to your left ear and your right ear. But your left ear and your right ear are getting more of the similar sound, but with a greater time differential, versus the most directional different sound straight to the left ear and the right ear of the, bang on toe in directly to your ears. So it's that percentage of direct versus reflected and the difference in timing between your left and your right ear. That's what's happening with the toe in. So if you treat your whole room, you are going to weaken all of the reflections. And therefore, as you change the toe in, the percentage difference between direct and indirect sound, it's not going to be as great a change in that percentage when you've padded your entire room and you've weakened all of the reflections. But it still makes a difference, because there's still a difference between what's coming directly to only your left ear versus what's coming directly only to your right ear from the left and right speakers, respectively.
I discovered toe-in long before I ever knew had any verbiage to explain why it was working. I think I noticed that when I was 18 and bought my first good rack stereo system from Panasonic that had 3-way speakers, and I had them on little stands, and I was like, they're far apart. I can't hear that one as much. Wait, if I do this, that's better.
Yep.
I felt like I invented something, and then learned later, oh yeah, that's a very common way to, hear more of the direct sound. Wow. How about that?
So his question continues. Why is it that a speaker that measures flat in an anechoic chamber would not also measure flat in a regular room? Shouldn't flat just mean flat? Well, let's talk about what anechoic chamber means. Anechoic means without echo, right? Yeah. So that means no reflections. So if you take a speaker and put it in a room at home that has no reflections, which is outdoors maybe, which is kind of impossible to do, then it should, yes, still measure flat. But as soon as you put it into a room that has furniture and walls and glass and drywall,
particularly
and reflections, then it can't measure flat anymore, because the microphone is hearing more reflections than it is hearing direct sound, and all it's getting in an anechoic chamber is direct sound.
Yeah, that's right. So, we would expect that, similar to how the high frequencies, as soon as you go off of direct axis in the anechoic measurement, they start to roll off. We're going to see that same thing in any room, right? Because of that directivity index, because of that total sound power, we always expect that the treble frequencies are going to be lower in amplitude inside of a real room versus the bass frequencies. Now, it's not this crazy gigantic rise in the bass that some people love as their target curve. We're basically talking about 1 to 1.5 decibels per octave. That's more or less the natural kind of slope of any anechoically flat speaker in any typical room. So that is perfectly reasonable. That's what we're looking for. And Klippel's doing a great job with their estimated in-room response. And what does it look like? It looks like a gentle downward slope from the bass to the treble.
So, going back to the whole sound power thing, why can speakers that measure not so great in that aspect still sound good? Like, it seems as though that having accurate on-axis frequency response is still ultimately the most important aspect to the sound quality that you actually experience. Can we talk about that a bit? Rob, I'll let you go first.
Sure. Dr. Floyd Toole has said the same thing, right? Like, he's said if you are forced by some external power to only pay attention to one thing, like, you want to pay attention to the anechoic on-axis frequency response. That still needs to be flat, because, again, it makes sense that signal in should equal signal out, and on-axis is obviously the place where that should be happening. Why can a speaker that measures flat anechoically on-axis but doesn't have nice, even, wide dispersion, why can that still sound good? Well, if you're the only listener and you have those speakers pointed straight at you, you you are hearing a higher ratio of direct sound at that point, and the direct sound is nice and linear and flat and accurate to the signal, and you, that signal listener with the speakers pointed straight at you, like a pair of electrostatic speakers that are very, very directional, right? You're going to be hearing that direct on-axis sound to your pair of ears. But where those speakers fall down is when there's more than just you listening. And you're trying to sit side by side with someone on a love seat, and now neither of you can be bang on axis, and now you're getting a whole bunch of reflected sound reaching your ears that doesn't match the on-axis sound, and we run into all of the issues that Dr. Floyd Toole has talked about with that.
Yeah, and I've sat in classrooms with Dr. Toole back when he still taught some of the CEDIA classes, and he would show these measurements and explain what all this meant. And he would take, a Harman speaker compared to, say, an electrostatic speaker compared to a speaker that has initials that have a very unique sound to them, and show you why these speakers, sounded the way they did. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't always necessarily, true to the personal experience of that person listening to the speaker. Mm-hmm. There's no accounting for taste in a lot of this stuff, right? And what a speaker measures versus what a speaker looks like versus what a speaker does in your room versus another room are all different things.
Yeah.
Okay. Next part of his question. Can we elaborate on the JBL Pro M2 speakers? They measure anechoically flat, right? But then people who've used them say they still can sound different depending on the room you're using them in. And it isn't just the bass. It can also be the mids and highs. So can we help him understand more about how the room affects our perception and at different frequencies? So I think we've kind of talked a lot about this.
Yeah.
Is that you take the same speaker and put it in 3 different rooms, it'll sound like 3 different speakers, right? Mm-hmm. Because those reflections that you're getting off of it, because of the percentage of direct versus indirect sound, what the modes in the room are doing to the low frequencies can really massively impact the sound of a speaker that you're perceiving.
Yeah, it's the key that you already hit upon, Joe, which is that, in a regular room, unless you're in a completely padded cell, tiny room, and the speakers are 1 meter away from you and aimed straight at your ears, and you're essentially creating a headphone setup. It's like the actual percentage of sound that reaches your ears is more reflected sound than direct sound. So that's why the very same speaker can sound different in different rooms. It's also the case of just take your friend whose voice you know very well, and you try to have a conversation in your tile bathroom versus your spare bedroom with the door closed versus your open great room. And it's you can recognize your friend's voice in all of those scenarios, but you're not going to say that their voice literally sounds the same in all of those rooms. Their voice sounds very different, but still recognizable. A good recording of that person's voice played through good, accurate speakers like the M2 should sound like that same person has followed you to each of those 3 separate rooms, but Exactly. It doesn't sound identical in those 3 different rooms. It just sounds like their voice in all of those 3 rooms.
Yeah, if your room has too much character of its own, that's when you need to start treating the room. If your room just has a little bit of easily perceived character of its own, your brain will filter it out, and you're going to hear what you need to hear. There's so many ways that a room can mess with the sound.
Yeah.
You've got different effects at different frequencies. You've got different timing things, different directions of different timing things. I keep picturing a tub full of water, and you splash your hands around, then go get in a swimming pool and move your hands exactly the same way. And it's 2 very different wave patterns in the water. And you're doing the same thing. So yeah, room is everything. I'm very lucky in my living room. It is a very gentle effect.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and most typical living situations are.
Yeah.
All right. Can we finish up with Miguel here?
In his own personal experience, he listened to us, and he changed the height of his speakers as well as their toe-in. He found his original speaker stands were too high, so he got shorter ones that helped get the tweeters in line with his ears, height-wise. But then he found his original toe-in made them sound a bit too sharp, so they're more or less pointed straight forward now, and now he thinks they sound fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm sure you guys can hear dog toenails on my floor. I'm so
but
sorry.
it's wonderful.
That's picked up. But
for me, that's super comforting.
So continue. But he also bought a bunch of rock wool to make 4.5-inch thick bass traps, and now he isn't sure if any of the insulation should go on his sidewalls or not. If changing the height and tone of his speakers could make such an audible difference, then what is acoustically treating his room with insulation going to do?
Yeah, so if you put a bit of an air gap behind those 4.5-inch thick insulation, you're going to have nice, broadband, pretty darn uniform absorption down to, well, yeah, if you put like a 1.5-inch thick air gap back there, you got a 6 inches of insulation, certainly down to 120 hertz. It's going to be nice and broadband and quite even. So all you're going to be doing is quite uniformly reducing the decay times of all of your frequencies. But like we've been saying, if you were to put panels that thick, if it was only 4.5 inches thick and you put them at the first reflection points of your sidewalls, it'd be like, it's not totally even. It's not terrible. It's certainly much better than only 2-inch thick insulation. But if you made them into 6 inches thick, I'm going to be like, well, you've pretty uniformly reduced your first reflections other than getting into sort of the crossover region, which can be, handled in other ways electronically, thankfully. So either way, doing that is not going to be the end of the world. But yeah, you could avoid the first reflections themselves and treat other parts of the sidewall. And all you're going to do is do a nice uniform job of knocking down the reverberation times in your room. So it's not a waste to have purchased that insulation. It can still be very useful. If you were to straddle some of your corners with it and build in that air gap with it, it's going to make nice, effective bass traps that are just going to reduce the overall decay times in your room without messing up any of the important first reflections.
Yeah, I would say if your speakers sound fantastic now, you're doing great. But the nice thing about rock wool, that's pretty rigid and it's easy to touch without bothering your skin or hands like the fiberglass stuff. So get some, small stools and lean this stuff up against the wall and give it a try and see if you like it. It might improve your imaging to some extent. But there's nothing wrong with trying it and seeing if it makes a difference before you go ahead and build everything out.
But that's also a very pretty darn safe one to try, because it's not going to really mess up the frequency response in one little area and then leave other parts untouched. It's going to be reasonably uniform across a broad band of spectrum, so that's going to be quite safe to use either direction. So we're way over our normal 2-hour time, but I'd love to do a handful more. Whatever you guys want to stick around for, you can tell me when to stop. And Lee, you've got to read the next one. So
All right, I'll read the next one because it's Infinite Gary.
That's
We're finally into new questions.
Right.
I feel myself weakening a bit.
That's okay.
With the hour that it is here, but I can continue on for a little longer because it's Infinite Gary. Gary would like to talk a bit about speaker imaging. In his primary home theater, he hired professional theater designers. They took measurements and performed an acoustical analysis and constructed and treated the room based on that. But in addition to the room itself, several days were spent carefully placing and adjusting the speakers in tiny increments. There is only one seat, and naturally it's right in the sweet spot. If you play a stereo recording with a singer front and center, you'd swear the center speaker is playing even though it isn't. And if he uses mono mode to play back any sort of content, you'd swear that only the center speaker is playing, as there's no perception whatsoever that it's actually the front, left, and right speakers making all of the sound when you're seated. That is a sweet spot. But in one of his other rooms, it is also enclosed and quiet with a low noise floor. It's fully carpeted. There's some other furniture in the room, so it isn't just completely bare walls. And he has one large acoustic art panel. It is, once again, a single seat right in the sweet spot. And his front, left, and right towers are a pair of Revel F206s. Excuse me. The two front speakers and his seat form an equilateral triangle, and he's played a little with speaker positioning and toe-in, but not to the same extent as what was done in the primary theater. We can guess what he's about to say next, right? The imaging in this setup is not as precise. Lead singer vocals or playing things in mono mode sound as though they are coming from in between the two speakers, but you wouldn't swear on your life that there is actually only a center speaker playing all of the sound the way you would in his primary theater. It's a little bit closer to a wall of sound coming from the front that is a bit wider and less distinct and pinpoint precise. Mm-hmm. He's not actually complaining. Sometimes he prefers that slightly wider presentation, and it's one of the reasons he enjoys having different setups in different rooms. He's able to listen and enjoy slightly different sounds depending on his mood and what he's listening to. But he would just like to clearly understand the reason for his difference. Is it strictly due to not having positioned and towed in this pair of speakers quite so painstakingly as what was done in his primary theater? Probably. Or is it a case where even if this pair of speakers were 100% optimally dialed in, it's actually the room's acoustics that are preventing the same imaging precision as what he hears in his primary theater? Got to be part of it.
So, I mean, refer to our last question, right? We really went in depth with that. Yeah, it's, to just state it plainly once again, it really is about that difference between your left ear and your right ear. And in this case, what's vitally important, if you want a completely convincing phantom center image, your left ear and your right ear must receive exactly the same sound. Mm-hmm. That's what's key here. If your left ear receives slightly different frequency response from the right ear, left ear versus right ear, you're going to notice that it isn't a perfect phantom center. If the timing between your left ear and your right ear is not identical, it's just as long as your brain can say, my left ear is ever so slightly different from my right ear. You're going to get the sense the sound is coming from between the two sources of sound, but not that completely 100% convincing phantom center image unless your left ear and your right ear are receiving identical signals. So, what is it playing with the toe in painstakingly, or is it the room acoustics? It's both. It is both. Because the playing with the toe in painstakingly is about the direct sound, right? Is my left ear getting exactly the same sound as my right ear from the direct sound that's coming from my speakers? If the angles are not completely identical, your left ear is slightly different from your right ear in terms of direct sound. But then it is also the room acoustics, because there are all the reflected sounds. And if the reflected sounds that reach your left ear are slightly different from the reflected sounds that reach your right ear, it's not going to be that completely convincing phantom center. So it is both, Gary. It's both the painstaking toe in and the acoustics of the room. And yeah, given the time and effort that went into your primary theater, they're like, the reflections from the left side of this room are identical to the reflections of the right side of the room, and not so in this spare bedroom type of setup.
It would be very hard to do. Okay, so as he understands it, this is a different question now from him. If you change from, say, a 50-watt amplifier to a 100-watt amplifier, that doubling of wattage means the 100-watt amp can play 3 decibels louder, correct?
Twice the wattage equals 3 decibels more output, right. Yes.
But is it as straightforward as you swap the 50-watt amp for the 100-watt amp, and now you lower the volume setting on your pre-pro by 3 dB to make them sound exactly the same?
Absolutely
I would say probably not at all, because it isn't always playing 100 watts. So
it sure is
different
not.
wattages all the time.
Yeah, so if, and this is a big if the two amplifiers had exactly the same amount of gain on the signal, then the 100-watt amplifier in this scenario would have 3 decibels of extra headroom over the 50-watt amplifier. Right. But if we're talking about normal listening levels, they sound identical already. All it means is that the 100-watt amplifier could make your speakers play 3 decibels louder than the absolute loudest that the 50-watt amplifier can make them play. There's 3 decibels more headroom. Now, what is more likely if you're like, I connected a 50-watt amp and then I connected a 100-watt amp and they instantly sounded different in volume. Is that because of the difference in wattage? No. That would be because of difference in gain. When you plug in the same preamplifier signal to those 2 different amps, if one of them has higher gain, which all it is amplifying the voltage only. That's what gain is. If those are different, then they're instantly going to sound different, because you've changed the incoming signal that then gets current amplified by the actual amplifier itself. So yeah, if you're hearing a difference instantly, it's a difference in gain. The change in maximum wattage is purely headroom alone.
All right. So as you have said before, you didn't want a 3-hour podcast. Would you like one more question, or what?
I mean, I'd love to do 2 more if we can. That's my goal.
All right. Let's see if we can do
Let's see
2
if we
more
can do
questions. Am I continuing to read?
Sure, why not?
All right. This one from Henry. In terms of truly innovative home theater technology, are we in a lull? He's been catching up on home theater news and podcasts from the beginning of this year, so he's just now digging into everything that was shown at CES and shortly thereafter. He saw the announcements about all of the TV brands, except for Samsung, foregoing any new 8K resolution models this year. So it sure seems like chasing after higher resolutions as the next big thing is done for the time being. So, in my opinion, good. There was some talk about certain TV models now hitting 10,000 peak nits, and other than Dolby Vision 2, there doesn't seem to be any huge advancements in HDR to look forward to. So is that basically it for HDR? We're done now? It's complete?
I mean, not entirely technically true. Theoretically, some insano person could create a full screen 10,000 nit signal. That is capable of being carried by the signal. No one would ever want to look at it.
No.
Optical blowtorch.
Yes, that's absolutely insane. But we're pretty close to the current HDR signal standards getting maxed out by the capabilities of our displays now. So I mean, and also, like, even if we did keep improving that, how noticeable is the difference? Right, it's getting a smaller and smaller noticeable difference now. Worrying about chasing after more and more nits.
I want to see it be made more available in a correct manner to more people at better prices.
Right.
So that's what I would be after. Is can we get that amazing OLED experience to more folks and make it simple to understand, make it where it's not vivid blowout settings when you first turn the TV on, better usability, that sort of thing. Because the specs that we have now for HDR and for resolution are enough for any home. Almost any home. Somebody's got an amazingly big home that it isn't enough for. But for regular people with regular homes, with drywall on the wall and 8 or even 10 or 16-foot ceilings, we have enough of the specs. We just got to get it where people can use it better. That's what
affordability. I think. But that's a little aside. That wasn't even the end of his question.
Sure. Well, he wanted to know, are we done now? Is it complete? And now you're never done, but we do
for
need
the HDR thing.
We do need to spread the tech to everybody. On the audio side of things, realistically speaking, Dolby Atmos has won, right? Like, it's the de facto standard for immersive audio releases. And with physical discs and Kaleidescape, we can even get it in lossless form. Perhaps we can look forward to streaming services offering lossless Dolby Atmos eventually. Apple, in particular, could maybe upgrade all the Atmos movies we bought through them to lossless audio someday. But that wouldn't actually be new. Mass market, affordable micro LED displays that come in modular panels that you snap together on your wall could maybe get people excited. But again, it's not actually new technology, it's just bringing existing technology to a new price category, which is what I'm after. So he asks again, are we just in a lull? Do we think we're going to be in this plateau for a while, or is there something truly new and innovative just over the horizon that he simply isn't seeing yet? I think we will get 3D and VR correct one day, and that'll be a huge leap.
Okay.
But I think there's some limitation to, we live in human homes with human walls, and you got to get a TV through a human door, and we can only spend so much of our income on the entertainment of a screen blasting at us. So when it comes to display technology, there's only so far you can go. And when it comes to some audio technology, kind of like how CD sound quality is good enough. You don't need any better. Honest to God, you don't. And I think it bothers everybody that 40-something years ago, we got the audio good enough. And so we're getting close to we've got the video good enough. If we can, make everything cheaper and more reliable and easier to understand. But I think it's very frustrating when it feels like, oh, well, shouldn't we just keep on innovating? Well, I don't know. Our ears are only so good. Our houses are only so big. Our budgets are only so big. So I don't know that we're in so much a lull as it's just we are getting very, very good at this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe it's more of like a convergence than it is a lull.
Yeah. That's a better way to put it. Yeah.
What do you think, Joe?
So I'm of two minds about this. If you look at almost any modern piece of technology, if you take your Apple Watch, for example, it's combining everything that your phone and your heart rate monitor and your GPS and your texting, all those things into one little tiny, Dick Tracy device that is now, on your wrist. So is that a new invention? No, that's a combining of a bunch of existing inventions, right? So we are kind of in a way getting to that. Until you start getting into like nanobots or micro technology or new materials, we're going to keep inventing stuff. And I think that some of that's true for home theater. I wouldn't say we're at a plateau. I'm still seeing the innovators, whether it's something like the waveforming that Trinov is doing or what Dirac is doing with art, that we can acoustically use other speakers to treat the sound in a room, that's really new cutting edge stuff. And I think that will continue to trickle down. Speaker technology, we've been using magnets and cones and domes for 100 years. So I'm not expecting that to change in subwoofers or speakers. It's a refinement on all of those things. Mm-hmm. I do think that things like, Atmos or RO3D or DTS:X, those weren't around 10 years ago, right? So that is, in the scheme of things, fairly new to home theater. And I think that's going to continue to evolve. I've seen, thoughts on, could you do 3 speakers across the front that everyone shares, and then each single seat has all of the surround speakers for it built into the seat, so you have a very unique, almost like a binaural type of an experience, right, which in home theater would work really, really well. So there's ideas of things that could come out in the near future that haven't come out yet, but I don't see it as being in a lull right now. I think the flat panel technology, whether that is all the different micro LEDs or OLED or whatever the ways you're making that, are continuing to get better and bigger and more affordable and trickling down that technology into lower price points. But it was 70 years that we had the CRTs.
Yep. Well, that's a little bit maybe what he's wondering is are we hitting another plateau where we're 50 years and things don't really change, or is it going to keep going at some kind of accelerated pace?
A screen's going to be a screen, but if you come back in 50 years, I'm guessing that you will describe to an AI the kind of movie you want to see.
And it'll make it for you?
I'm not kidding. And it will create it on the fly. Do you want to be in it? How do you want it to sound? Are you wearing headphones? What are you doing? Are you sitting on the couch? How can we form this for you to entertain you right now? In 50 years, I guarantee you'll be able to do something like that. Maybe even put on the VR helmet and see it. I can only imagine the kinds of content. So things like that will happen, but I don't know you'll have more nits in 50 years, because your eyes only need so much to see. The house is going to be shaped the same in 50 years, more or less.
Dolby's research suggested up to 20,000 nits could be useful. So we got a ways to go.
I guarantee you that in our lifetimes, you will be able to sort of describe and request the kind of music you're into, and if you wanted to wear some sort of body monitoring, some response monitoring, it could detect if you are enjoying the music that it's making for you, and if not, it would tweak it till you responded I like that a lot. Some sort of brainwave sensor, the helmet thing. But
why not just put everybody on drugs, Lee? Isn't that easier to get that brain response?
Yeah. But they don't allow that. You can wear a freaking magnetic helmet on your head, but you can't go take a little acid. So there's going to be all kinds of interesting, magical things that'll happen. But as far as the actual, speakers still have to move air, headphones have to move air. A screen is a screen. I don't foresee, maybe I'm wrong, but maybe in 50 years there's going to be something that I can't foresee that would just create the Star Wars hologram in front of you.
Well,
that would be tremendously different. I don't know what that is, but maybe that will happen.
My thought of what's really going to get people excited next, and it's an entirely plausible technology, is true voxel capture and display, right? So rather than flat 2-dimensional pixels, we have 3-dimensional voxels, and so we already have camera systems and computer generation that can create voxel based things, and then a true voxel display, which is the real life hologram. I think that would get consumers genuinely excited, but it's an entirely new creative pipeline that would have to be created to go along with it. So do I think it'll happen fast? No. AI could actually be very helpful in that. That's going to be a key part of bringing it to consumers in an affordable way, because there's genuinely creating holographic displays is not going to be cheap, but if you can fool our eyes from whatever perspective we're looking at it, that's going to be a less expensive way of getting to true voxel displays. But before we get to that, while we're sticking with 2-dimensional flat displays, I do think electroluminescent quantum dots are going to be an important development. We're working on that. The people are working on that research. It's not some type of theoretical fiction. It exists. It's just bringing that to actual market. I think that's going to be a genuinely noticeable improvement in our regular flat displays, is electroluminescent quantum dots. And then on the audio side, some of the stuff that Bach has been showing off with that beam-forming wave synthesis where you're getting a full, like, even more than our current immersive audio, right? Like, genuine three-dimensional sound. It can be below you, it can be behind you and below you, and it can be truly above, like a true sphere of sound, but from, like, one little bar of speakers that don't necessarily have to target only a single listener, that it can actually be sophisticated enough to measure via camera or some other, LiDAR sensing system, the location of the pair of ears for multiple listeners, and then beamform specifically, that whole thing. Difference between left ear and right ear. We do only have our 2-ear binaural hearing system. So we don't genuinely need gazillions of speakers around us. We just have to get our left ear and our right ear to hear exactly the correct sounds to create the illusion of a true 360-degree bubble. And we're getting closer and closer and closer to being able to do that affordably. So I think those are the next things.
Yeah, so just 2 other comments on that real quick. Henry, if you've not been to Las Vegas lately and go to the Sphere, that is an impressive experience. And I think they're showing Wizard of Oz right now in a way you've never seen it before. Right? So both from an audio and video standpoint, that speaks to where the future can go.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is follow the money, right? If companies can keep making a buck off of this, they'll keep coming out with new technologies to try and get the consumers' dollars.
Yeah, I could see in the future putting on a VR helmet and wanting to watch Wizard of Oz VR AI. And you would be able to move through it and decide where you wanted to go in the movie, and it would create that on the fly. Like if I wanted to follow along behind them as we go down the yellow brick road, if I want to zoom around behind the Wicked Witch, if I want to see what like the Sphere has you're in the tornado thing. I could imagine, some little simple movement thing and goggles on. That'll come one day. That would be kind of amazing. But also, there's this other effect where we can imagine a lot of things that you could do. But it turns out people don't want to do all the things that you can do. And so that's
largely
why 3D,
putting goggles on their head. A lot of people don't want to do that.
Right. So I was about to say, goggles are only something you're going to do for a little bit, like the amount of time you might play a game. Some people do it for hours, some just for a little bit. But, like we have the ability to video call each other. And not many people do. It doesn't happen very. We've been able to call each other with our voices for 100 and something years, and it turns out we never really wanted to. We just want to get messages across with a text.
We kind of prefer text, yeah.
Right. And so, do you really want to do it? It's a little bit like how I like to watch TV laying over on the armrest of the couch.
That's right.
Which is heresy for surround sound. One of my ears is pressed up against a pillow.
You need some real good beamforming in your case.
Right. It's not going to have it. So what do we want? I think that's what you really have to ask is, what do we want? Because we'll eventually get what we want. We're pretty smart critters.
Well, let's wrap up with this last question. We'll be just under 3 hours, so hooray.
Right, yeah, the 3-hour club. Come on. Okay, Kevin will wrap it up for us today. Kevin has a home gym in his basement. It's at the end of a hallway, so it's kind of its own room. But it's completely open to that hallway, which then leads to the rest of the basement. So in terms of the open volume of air, it's somewhere around 4,000 cubic feet. He had a rack set up for doing squats. And just behind that, he had enough room to position a small TV and an old pair of DefTech Tower speakers with built-in powered subwoofer drivers. They were driven by a pair of 120 watt per channel amplifier channels on his Control 4 C4 16 amp 3-B distribution amp, which he fully intends to continue using.
That is a 16-channel amplifier. That 16 amp is right in the name.
Right, there it is. Right there. It does what it says on the tin, as they say. But the gym is going to be doubling as a play area now. So he installed a new squat rack that is wall mounted and can swing out of the way when not in use. It's kind of like a Murphy bed, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. That means the TV and the DefTech speakers are gone. And now he's looking to install just a pair of in-wall speakers. No plans for a subwoofer, and he's already made his peace that whatever in-walls he installs won't provide as much bass as his DefTechs. That's okay.
Good, yes, because that is going to be the case.
So he knows. He doesn't need the new in-walls to hit reference volume or anything, but he would like them to be able to play loud enough to be enjoyed from around the corner down the hallway a bit. As mentioned, they'll be powered by the 120 watt per channel Control 4 amp, and he'd like to keep the price for the new pair of speakers to under $600 if possible. What do we suggest? There's got to be plenty of options to fit that.
Well, I mean, for the price point, I'm looking for something that does have some pretty decent output and bass capabilities. Because this open space is gonna eat up any bass that's coming out of these speakers. So I was pretty much exclusively looking at in-wall speakers that do have 8-inch drivers in them, which you can find them for certainly under $600 a pair. But then I'm also going to want to have some rear enclosures on those speakers. I'm never a fan of putting in walls or in ceilings without a rear enclosure on the back of them. So right away, I'm eating about $150 into that budget because I'm still suggesting this is going to be a retrofit system for sure. So I'm suggesting the N-wall retrofit rear enclosure system made by Dynamat, same makers of the Dynabox that I recommend frequently for the in-ceiling speakers. So, those are $75 each, but I think well worth it for those rear enclosures. So we've already eaten up about $150 of that $600 budget. So I already skipped past some of those pictures there. But yeah, if my first thought was like Monoprice, what does Monoprice have that's going to work for this scenario? So my favorite from theirs are the Alpha series, the Monoprice Alpha series. $200 gets you their pair of 8-inch carbon fiber woofers, regular dome tweeter. The tweeter is pivotable, so you can aim that a little bit, but that's certainly not breaking the bank. And I think they're a pretty reasonable choice. They do have extension down to about 45 hertz. The specs might say differently, but they have relatively decent output down to about that level. One of my favorites that's, I mentioned frequently are RSL's speakers. They're in-walls, the W25E. They go for $400 a pair, so they're twice the price of the Monoprice. Now, these are smaller woofers that are in these. These are a pair of 5 1/4-inch woofers, I think, but 2 of them, so that equals in surface area about a 7.5-inch diameter single driver. But they can play louder than you might expect, but they aren't exactly bass champions, right? Like I'd be crossing those speakers over to a subwoofer, certainly at 80 hertz, probably closer to 90 hertz. But they're outputting sound down into certainly into the 60s, maybe into the high 50s. So one that by the specs plays the lowest of all would be Outdoor Speaker Depot's Black Series T83 at $436 for the pair. They're the most expensive, but you can still get them and the Dynamat and wall rear enclosures within the $600 budget, all totaled. Now, they are using a very, very similar design to the Monoprice Alphas, but a slightly different woofer, and they're claiming, -3 extension down to just below 30 hertz. I don't know how super truthful that really is. My experience of the Outdoor Speaker Depot's in-wall speakers is that they're very good value, very, very good value, but they're not magic. They're not doing something that the Monoprice Alphas really can't do. So I'm like, between those three, like the value champion for sure are going to be those Monoprice Alphas. I think the sound quality champion is the RSLs, but you're going to have to accept that they are definitely the most bass shy out of this group. Joe, did you have a different solution?
So I do like the idea of the enclosure, but I would rather have something where it's designed and built in with the speaker. I know Klipsch has a lot of in-wall speakers where the back box, the enclosure is part of that. I also like the Klipsch for the high efficiency. You run 120 watts, that's a good amount of power, but if you want something that's going to fill a room, that's definitely something to look at, especially with their horn-type drivers. And I know you're ruling out your subwoofer for now, but I'm going back to the SBS in-wall that has a built-in back box, plenty of power. I know it's not cheap, but
that's breaking a $600 budget right quick.
I said down the road, right? Thankfully, right? But there are options for in-wall subs that really would take up no room and really make the system cake.
With the Klipsch's, though, if you're buying new, I think you're going to struggle with that budget. That's going to be a little bit tricky. So you'd probably be wanting to look at used Klipsch in-walls if you're going that route. I agree. Certainly the sensitivity is a nice bonus. I would want the incorporated backer boxes for sure. But I think you'd struggle a little bit for the $600 budget to find the larger size, right? Maybe you could get the 4-inch ones at that sort of price, but the 8-inchers, that's going to be a bit of a struggle.
I think by his description, he understands he's not getting the highest sound quality. He clearly is looking to enjoy some music while he's working out, right?
Like, my other thought was,
That's kind of the point,
could you get
right?
2 pairs of the monoprice alphas and set them up, some different direction, because that gives you a whole lot more output. It's easier to aim something that's going down the hall as well as aiming the same direction that your old DefTex used to be. And it's like, with the monoprice alphas, you can fit it within the budget. So
That's
I'm
true.
thinking maybe
That's
you
not a
get
bad
2 pair. You got 16 amplifier channels. Can you? Well, you could honestly drive 2 pairs of the monoprice alphas off of just 2 of those amplifier channels, no real problem. But maybe you have 4 amplifier channels available, and then you got even more output capability.
But then he'd need 2 more enclosures.
There's that, yeah. But I mean, we're not going wildly over budget at that point.
Right, that's not wild.
We're still pretty close.
I think he'd probably be happy with the cheaper ones, and it sounds kind of fun if you get 4 of them, just by his description.
Yeah.
But they are going to, if they're going to be in the wall, they're probably going to be in the wall for a long time. So maybe you want to spend a little more and get something that's just a little bit better sound. I don't know.
All right. Well, we've got to end there because we've gone absolutely ridiculous, but it's been a whole lot of fun with a 3-man podcast. So I will mention that we have on our list John, Greg, a different John spelled differently and also in a different country, and Nick. So those questions have all been written up and are ready for Tom and I to tackle next week. I did also mention on Monday, got emails from Alan and another one from Infinite Gary. So just confirming that we did in fact receive those emails, and our email address seems to be working just fine. Speaking of which, if you want to get in touch with us, the easiest way is via email. The email address is question@avrant.com. Far and away the best way to get in touch with us. Email us at question@avrant.com. Alrighty, so let's scroll back up and thank our listeners of the week, folks who have supported this podcast in some way. So a shout out to anyone who donated via PayPal. I don't know if you did this week. Tom will catch us up next week. Patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thanks to our 121 patrons there. John, thank you for being one of them. And then thank you to Kenny, Infinite Gary, Kevin, Davide, Greg, Karl, and John for your notes of gratitude and just keeping the podcast going. So we really appreciate that. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. And so let's see. I want to thank Joe Klusnick. I want to thank Lee Overstreet. We didn't rehearse our outro here. So let's just say.
I was about to ask, when it's just 2 of us, we know what to say.
I think Lee is going to go last, right? So I'll sign off first. Joe, you after me, and then Lee, you can go last and do the full sign off. So on behalf of Tom Andry, this has been AVRant. I am Rob H.
I'm Joe Klusnick.
And I'm Lee Overstreet. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.